Well, howdy ho, and how you doing? Good to see you all today. Getting right to it. I've lost my pick. Where did I put my pick? You know how it goes sometimes. Such is life. We're streaming today. We're streaming away. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see. Hey, Misty, this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me. Watch the world go to hell because we're streaming away. We're streaming today. Let's stream today. Beautiful shot here. Sunny Ontario, the lovely beaches, the rocky shore. I think that's Lake Superior, if I'm not mistaken. I hope you guys are doing well out there right now. So, as always, as we do on this channel, we move over to Mr. David Lynch and his regular update.
Good morning. It's August 31, 2021, and it's a Tuesday. Here in LA, cloudy, very still right now, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, around 18 Celsius. Today, I was thinking about the song In My Life by the Beatles from the album Rubber Soul around 1965. This afternoon, it'll be going up to only 75 degrees Fahrenheit, around 24 Celsius, and it looks like it's going to be what they call partly cloudy all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.
You as well, Mr. Lynch. Thanks so much for the update. Of course, he requests a Beatles song, and you know how YouTube is when it comes to Beatles, so I can't do that. So we're just going to pop right into the number. Misty, you're feeling a 7. I think that I'm going to stick with a 5 today. I'm feeling today is a 5 day. Yet to hit one of these.
Here we go for today's number.
Here we go.
It's August 31,
if anybody's
2021.
in the chat still, now's the time. Now's the time.
10 balls. Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10.
Here we go.
Swirl the numbers. Pick a number. Today's number is 9.
The magic number. The magic number for Mr. Lynch. What will tomorrow's number be? Well, that makes today a fairly magical day, even though neither of us got it. Oh well. So let's move into today's news. This article here comes from Better Dwelling. I'm going to read this one in its entirety because I think it's extremely important that we understand what's going on in regard to the housing market here in Canada. And articles like this dispel a lot of myths and give a lot of evidence as to not only what is happening in the housing market, but how much the Conservative Liberal Alliance has worked to cover up what has been happening in the housing market. This comes from Better Dwelling, which steadily I'm beginning to see as a very strong outlet. Better Dwelling Canada hid a foreign capital and housing study while dismissing intelligence warnings. Canadian tax authorities confirmed that they knew about illicit foreign capital inflating real estate. They first found out over 2 decades ago, but only confirmed it to the South China Morning Post this week. A whistleblowing retired auditor first told SCMP journalist Ian Young about the report in 2016. He waited half a decade for a response from the agency, which confirmed the study took place 25 years ago. The situation shares odd circumstances with an intelligence report mentioning foreign capital and real estate called Sidewinder. Whistleblowers allege both reports, written 1 year apart, were suppressed for political reasons. The Canadian government hid a report on immigrants buying mansions with poverty-level incomes. In 1996, the Canada Revenue Agency studied millionaire migrants and home ownership. The tax authority was looking into reports of mansion buyers with poverty-level incomes. Not 1 or 2 either. It was a systemic issue. The secret report was unknown to the public until 2016, when a CRA whistleblower told the SCMP about it. At the time, the alleged study was suppressed from above. 5 years after SCMP filed a Freedom of Information request, the agency confirmed it does exist. The volume of wealthy new immigrants declaring refugee amounts of income was impressive. Young's analysis shows these buyers scooped 90% of high-value homes in the Greater Vancouver suburbs of Burnaby and Coquitlam. Ugh. He notes long-term residents making similar buys declared around 16 times the income. In one example, Young mentions a buyer of a $2.88 million home who declared just $174 of income. Not $174,000, but $174. About as much as a single night's stay at a Holiday Inn for some of the world's most expensive real estate in 1996. Greater Vancouver real estate has a very long relationship with foreign capital. Greater Vancouver real estate has long been a hub for foreign capital. Around the time of the study, using homes as a vault for foreign capital was an open secret. The president of Vancouver's largest developer would boast a year after the study, no one really got out of Hong Kong, they just shifted their portfolio. He himself is now Vancouver's largest developer, for those curious. Meanwhile, locals and politicians argued if the issue even existed. A study confirming that foreign capital was inflating home prices may have been a game changer. Marginal buyers can, and did, have a big influence on home prices. Instead of using this information to improve the lives of residents, it was hidden. Why it was hidden until today is still a mystery, and no one will likely ever discuss the real reason. However, it does bear a strange resemblance to another report on foreign capital and real estate, Operation Sidewinder. A Canadian intel report discussing foreign capital and real estate was also suppressed. A joint task force of the RCMP and CSIS was created in 1997 to assess China's influence on Canada. The result was a top-secret report called Sidewinder, Chinese Intelligence Services and Triad's Financial Links. The branding budget must have been really tiny at the time. There were many allegations, but a big one was criminals exploiting the immigration system. Hiding amongst legitimate immigrants, organized crime infiltrated the same channels to do business. One goal they were accused of is buying real estate to control local politicians. In itself, real estate is not an obvious threat to the security of Canada, but it becomes an excellent vehicle to gain access to local politicians and their influence and power, reads the report. The report concludes the joint task force should involve immigration for better screening. Instead, the project was shelved and discredited by CSIS. The RCMP claims the spy agency sanitized the report. One agent even went so far as to file an obstruction complaint. A report from the Security Intelligence Review Committee in 1999 concluded Sidewinder was deeply flawed and unpersuasive. A longer 22-page report was also released with it, which doesn't once use the word China. Instead, they opt to call it a certain foreign country, but they validate some of Sidewinder's findings as correct. The details on which parts were correct are scarce, but this part gets airtime from Canada's top spy over a decade later. The triads, the tycoons, and the Chinese intelligence have learned the quick way to gain influence is to provide finance to the main political parties. Most of the companies identified this research have contributed, sometimes several tens of thousands of dollars, to the two traditional parties, that is, the Liberal and the Progressive Conservative parties. Operation Sidewinder, 1997. Despite the dismissal of the report, a few key allegations would surface again. U.S. Congress wrote a report on organized crime in Canada originating from Asia. A U.S. congressman also made similar allegations to Sidewinder, but in regards to Panama, when testifying to the House Committee on Banking and Financial Services in 1999. It's not just the Americans being paranoid, though. In 2010, the head of CSIS candidly told the CBC that they were tracking BC public servants. He backtracked a few weeks later, saying it was nothing. It's apparently a fun game Canada's top spies play, where they mention threats and then just add JK. Let's assume both reports within a year of each other weren't the subject of malicious suppression. What we're seeing here is a period where essential information was suppressed. Information that could have drastically altered Canada's housing crisis, possibly avoiding it entirely. Canada learned money laundering and tax evasion influenced home prices 25 years ago. Over that period, politicians and bureaucrats didn't just hide the findings, they denied it, and often attacked anyone who made similar allegations over that time. All while housing affordability errored into a systemic issue, threatening economic stability. Now all parties acknowledge these issues exist. In fact, addressing them is a key part of every major political party's election platform this year. So, this follows the exact same trajectory as the climate change scandals that we're undergoing now, right? That the very people who are supposed to be responsible for regulating and ensuring the organization of the economy or of a section of the economy are actually responsible for completely pillaring it and completely destroying it for their own personal gain. And this, of course, is being done in this particular case to allow criminal organizations to launder money and to allow investors and speculators to turn our housing market into a casino. This is how capitalism works, right? I keep having these conversations with people who seem to think that what's happening in our society is strange or unusual or quote-unquote not capitalism or any of these things. What we are experiencing is exactly how capitalism is designed to function. This is how capitalism works. It doesn't organize itself in order to benefit the populace. That's just a stupid myth told by idiots. Capitalism organizes itself to maximize profit for a small group of owners exclusively. Any destruction that it creates along the way, whether it be the entire housing market or whether it be the environment or any other aspect of the society, is completely irrelevant. That capitalism is not designed to protect anyone. It is designed to destroy everything, enrich a small group of people, and then collapse That's what capitalism does, and it does this once every decade, at least, if not more than that. Our own society has experienced in the last 30 years no less than 3 economic collapses. And the fact that this study was done and then suppressed is exactly how the capitalist class treats every issue. That, oh, we have information and evidence that shows that our actions and how we are acting within a sector of the economy is actually destroying it. Well, we'll just suppress that and not talk about that. Very much in the same way that ExxonMobil suppressed its own reports surrounding the climate change issue that it has paid billions of dollars to deny exists. I mean, these are crimes. The people who have been suppressing this information and the people who are responsible for perpetuating these crimes should be tried, and that includes both liberals and conservatives. Right? This is an issue that's been going on for 25 years, and the liberal and the conservative alliance has been working in tandem with criminal organizations and speculators in order to maximize the damage that will be inflicted against the populace. It's very straightforward. And the questions that we're asking ourselves now is not, well, what should we do about it? The questions that we seem to be asking now is, well, how much suffering will the populace tolerate before we have to do something about it? That the solutions that are being proposed by the major parties are non-solutions. They will not resolve these issues because they're not designed to resolve the issues. That the leaders of the major parties are in bed with these investors, and so they are saying insipid, stupid things in order to convince a gullible populace that something is being done, when nothing of the sort will be done. It's very similar to how the liberals declared a climate emergency and then bought a pipeline, right? Like the goal is to control dissent. That's the goal. That what the capitalists are most concerned about is a swelling insurgence of anti-capitalist thought and anti-capitalist political movements like the Marxist-Leninists, the communists, coming up and saying what is fundamentally true, that capitalists are worthless and they need to be eliminated from the discourse completely. Hey Duke, hey Demand Better, how you guys doing? Good to see you. Yeah, gotta love how cheap our politicians are. Yeah, they're so easy, eh? Like, it's so easy to buy a politician. Like, yeah, it was such a good idea making sure that one guy had $1 billion, right? Like, such a smart idea, given how cheap it is and how easy it is to buy politicians. Like, you basically just need to give them nothing and they'll go along with you. The amount of money stored in tax havens and siphoned off for rich criminal enterprise could literally end poverty, climate crisis, and provide orgasms for all. Well, I like it, Demand Better. Let's run on that platform. Orgasms for all. Easily enough and then some. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, and we are starting to see, I was talking about controlling dissent. Well, here's a great Maclean's magazine article that's talking exactly about this. Another article that I think is worth reading out loud, because while it talks in glowing terms, I of course am very suspicious of this. So this comes from Maclean, written by Justin Ling, Aaron O'Toole, Socialist Crusader. So right off the top, this is some garbage. There's no way, like, the conservatives are currently pulling a Doug Ford. Doug Ford told a whole bunch of lies on the campaign, didn't do anything he really promised to do. All the things he said he wouldn't do, he went ahead and did, right? We had a basic income pilot here in Ontario that they just literally were asked straight out, are you going to get rid of it? And they said no, and literally the first thing they did was get rid of it. Because conservatives hate poor people. It's very straightforward. And as I go through this, you're going to see the entire platform of the Conservative Party is to do two things. One, get their majority, right? And then two, control dissent, right? Because there is an upswell of communist support that is coming out of the country. And the conservatives are fairly aware that if all they do is go in and act like conservatives, they'll be ousted pretty quickly. So what they have to do is play that liberal game, right? Of looking like they're doing stuff, but doing everything they can to preserve the capitalist system, right? So what better way to go through this than to take somebody who is this delusional? Like, this is delusional, right? There's no way that Aaron O'Toole's a quote-unquote socialist crusader. But it's just like, that's a joke. The policies put forth by the Conservatives are serious, sensible, and pro-worker. They're also impressive when put next to the anemic NDP platform. The anemic NDP platform of effectively taxing the wealth away, which is actually how you deal with billionaires, right? If you have a parasite in your system, you need to get rid of the parasite. Aaron O'Toole's strategy is to keep the parasite in place, but put like little roses and flowers around it so that you'll be like, oh, it's such a nice parasite. It may surprise you to hear a conservative bemoan the decline of private sector union membership, Aaron O'Toole told captains of industry last year. But that's exactly what the conservative leader did. In a speech to the Canadian Club of Toronto, no less, he lamented that there was once a balance between workers and business. Today that balance is dangerously disappearing. Too much power is in the hands of corporate and financial elites who have been only too happy to outsource jobs abroad. It was a curious line from the leader of a party that's rarely been a friend to organized workers. But, at the time, that's all it was, a line. O'Toole had offered no particular course of action on how to remedy the growing imbalance between boss and employee, corporation and worker, and the Conservatives continued to struggle attracting new voters. That is, until O'Toole unveiled his election platform. In his beefy campaign document, O'Toole offers a number of clever, innovative, and forward-thinking policies that could be a real boon to workers in Canada, from those with strong unions to those who know the precarity of gig labor. So they're really buttering us up. They're really looking at the worker and the working class and trying to sucker us as much as possible, right? We should be hard-nosed and skeptical the entire time. Like, until literally the billionaire class is gone, we should believe that we are in the midst of a class war. And so here's the attempt at negotiation, right, that is coming from the sociopathic parasite class. Workplace democracy. O'Toole's platform calls for 4 major things to give workers a voice around corporate governance and economic policy. Remember, anything except anything to keep you doing all the work while they do nothing, right? So require that large federally regulated employers, either those with 1,000 or more employees or 100 million in annual revenue, have worker representation on their board of directors. So you put one guy on your board of directors, call him a worker representative, and ignore him, right? That's essentially what happens. And gullible workers who are stupid enough to vote conservative in the first place will sit there and be like, yeah, we got representation on the board. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, so point 1, already total bullshit. Like, total bullshit. If you're stupid enough to believe that that is a point, that this actually matters, then you're stupid enough to vote conservative. Provide tax breaks, always tax breaks, right, to employers, right, who sell shares to employee ownership trusts. Oh. So how's this helping the workers exactly? Not near as I can tell, this is just a way to keep workers in line, right? That, oh, we're selling you employee ownership trusts that are only good if you're working for us, doing all the work while we do nothing, right? The real benefit is for the employers. So, again, Workers, go fuck yourself. If you're stupid enough to believe this is going to help you, you're stupid enough to vote Conservative. Amend the Canada Labour Code to give workers a leg up when trying to unionize shops in companies with a history of anti-union activity, especially large multinationals. So this is what I like to call Trojan horsing, right? This is called Trojan horsing, right? Amend the Canada Labour Code. Certainly, they're not going to do other amendments to the Canada Labour Code, right? Certainly, they're not going to include a bunch of other changes to the Canada Labour Code. No, they're just going to focus on, yeah, we're going to give workers a leg up when unionizing. Yeah, that's what we're amending the code for. Everybody focus on that. Don't focus on the other thing over here. Again, if you're stupid enough to believe this, you're stupid enough to vote Conservative. Give labor unions standing at the Canada International Trade Tribunal to file action against companies. Give labor unions standing. I see what you're saying. Give labor unions standing at the Canada International Trade Tribunal to file action against companies. So once again, like, unions by and large work with the capitalist class now. If you have billions of dollars, it's extremely easy to buy unions. So this is more Trojan horsing, right? If you ask me. So again, if you're stupid enough to believe this is going to help you, you're stupid enough to believe that you should be voting for Conservative. Putting workers on boards is not only a brilliant idea, but it's been standard policy in Europe for decades. Originating in Scandinavia, has become popular in France, Germany, and a number of other countries, right? So when it happens in places like France and Germany, it means that the board gets about 50% control, worker control. That's 100% not what's going to happen here. So if you, for example, in Germany, the law is if you have a big multinational corporation, half the shares must be owned by the workers, period. Half the shares are owned by the workers. So that's your, like, Walmarts, right? Your Targets, your McDonald's, like all these places. Half the shares are owned by workers, right? There's a reason why the minimum wage in Germany is in, like, the mid-20s, right? And it's because workers are actually given power. This is not what we're talking about here. Creating one seat to sit on a board of 10 people who will be ignored roundly. Like, it's so obvious. It's so obvious that it's grifting. Like, that the Conservatives are taking successful policies elsewhere, gussing them up and pretending like that's what they're going to be doing. It's so obviously controlling dissent. Hey, Ruth, how you doing? Leg up next to the hydrant, you mean? I like it. I like it, Ruth. I love it. A recent study from the UK-based Centre for Economic Policy Research, very trustworthy source, by the way. This is essentially a far-right neocon organization. You really, really shouldn't be trusting organizations like this. Like, literally, it's like, you know, an institute funded by Darth Vader said that Death Star production is increasing jobs. Like, that's the kind of shit that you're getting from these guys. Looking at Germany's example, 3 huge benefits for companies and workers alike. 1, capital increases rather than decreases when workers get seats on the board. Yeah, when workers get an appropriate amount of seats on the board, not the one that they're going to end up with. 2, outsourcing goes dramatically down as firms decide to produce more in-house rather than buying intermediate inputs from suppliers. Yeah, again, the same story. It's not going to happen. And finally, that worker productivity increases. Since when have the capitalist classes actually genuinely cared about that? If the capitalist classes genuinely cared about worker productivity increasing, we would have a 4-day week. That would already have happened, right? If they genuinely cared about worker productivity increasing, they would have raised the minimum wage to $30 already. They don't care about that. They've never cared about that. That as long as you are doing all the work and they are doing none of the work while getting all of the money, they're happy. That's how they've always operated, and I have no reason to believe anything these guys say. Like, 0%. 0% of any of this should be believed for a second. We should assume that these are lies, and then watch as the lies unfold, right? Duke, you said something back here. I think there was an Australian party called the Sex Party, didn't have too dissimilar a program. Seeing socialist here reminds me of its use in National Socialist. It drives me crazy when people bring up that National Socialist connection. Like, oh, big surprise, a murderous, psychopathic, like, person walking around with a book that said we should exterminate the Jews walked into a socialist party and took it over. Like, even socialists at the time were literally saying, like, that's not socialism. Hans Bockler Foundation, a German trade union think tank, boasts similar numbers. From productivity and economic returns to innovation and job training, workplaces with worker representation on the board, usually referred to as co-determination, simply perform better. You see how they're trying to convince you that this is what the conservatives are actually pitching, right? It's not what's going to happen. Like, I cannot stress this enough, that the conservatives are liars. They're not very effective liars. If they were more effective liars, they would have been in power for longer. Just take a look at the liberals, who are far more effective liars. This election seems to be the moment when the liberal grift is sort of coming to an end. And so what do? We go back to the conservatives, because we're very gullible. Given the federal government only regulates about 18,000 employers, largely in telecommunications, transport, banking, and a few other sectors, there are roughly 750,000 workers in the country who could expect to see a direct result of these measures. Even still, it's a novel idea that could inspire provinces to follow suit if it was done, which it won't be. One measure that may have wider application is the creation of employee ownership trusts, a vehicle for shares in the company owned by employees. If an employer sells stakes in the company into the trust, they'll enjoy a break in their capital gains tax. Yeah, tax cuts for the rich. That's how workers do better, right? Workers do better with tax cuts for the rich. That's 100% how this grift works, right? These two levers of employee ownership of corporations are fairly radical in North America. In fact, getting more workers on boards was a core policy plank from erstwhile Democratic presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren, while the idea of employee corporate ownership trusts was pitched by her rival Bernie Sanders. Vox called it his most socialist idea yet. In fairness to both O'Toole and Sanders, the Conservative want to incentivize the contributions through tax breaks, whereas Sanders wanted to mandate such contributions, right? Like, oh, you can't govern if you're a conservative, right? You always got to give a tax break. And that's all it is. It's just a way to do tax breaks for rich people again, right? And sure as shooting, there's going to be a way for them to reclaim any losses that they accrued from having to sell these shares to these workers, right? While it's not exactly clear how it will take shape, there's the key phrase right there, right? While it's not exactly clear how it'll take shape, yeah, it's pretty clear, right, that they'll do everything they can to undercut workers as they do while pretending as though they give a shit, so that the gullible populace will be placated and not do what must be done, which is overthrow the system of capital that is clearly failing. Like, clearly failing, right? O'Toole's camp is like, and the fact that they're even talking about this tells you how desperate they are, right? The fact that they're even playing this game tells you that they are aware that the system that they are propagating has failed, and that it is going to continue failing, and that if they don't at least begin talking this game of actually helping citizens, they're never going to be able to seize power. If the populace is extremely gullible, which this election has revealed outright, like, I mean, has there ever been a more gullible populace than this one? We're just going to hand it over to them, and then what are they going to do? They're going to totally fuck us over. They're going to just, like, slap a sticker on something and say, yeah, we did it. And, like, I don't know why we would ever believe these guys. Like, why would we ever believe these guys? While it's not clear exactly how it will take shape, O'Toole's camp is also proposing measures to help workers in anti-union workplaces, citing examples of large multinationals like Walmart and Amazon firing workers who attempt to unionize. The Conservatives are suggesting that they would work with unions to find solutions to help union workers organize. While it's not clear exactly how that would work, it wouldn't. Ottawa can't regulate provincial workplaces. It's nevertheless an intriguing commitment that could seriously advantage workers who are most in need of representation or most at risk by asking for it. Like, how dare this article get made and published in Maclean's, right? That the tone of this piece is so literally like a wank. It's just like walking up to the conservatives being like, yeah, conservatives, you're the greatest, right? It's obviously bullshit. You should be reporting on it like it's obvious bullshit. Articles like this are why people are turning to people like me, right? Articles like this are the reason why people like me are picking up numbers. Why people are going like, hey, my mainstream media sounds like a bunch of dumb bullshit, and only gullible morons would listen to it. Well, here's a great example of that. Just a gullible rube writing what is obviously like a pro-conservative puff piece in order to con gullible workers into voting conservative so that they can get betrayed by them. Like, it's obviously what's going to happen, right? Like, how do I know it's going to happen? Because it's all the conservatives have ever done. It's all they've ever done. It's all they've ever done. Like, literally, you are trying to convince me, like, no, you can go into that room with that knife-wielding psychopath who's stabbed the last 40 people that have gone in there. It'll be different this time. He's not going to stab you with the knife as he's covered in blood. Like, he's looking into the camera being like, hey, guys, I'm completely better now. Yeah, I'm totally better now, you know? In fact, here, what I'll do is I'll take the knife and I'll put it over here. Look, I'm not even holding the knife anymore, guys. Just come into the room. Everything's better now. That's literally what I see when I see the Conservative Party. I see a knife-wielding, psychopathic murderer covered in blood who's already murdered my friends and family, staring into a camera saying, no, I'm done murdering people. And the idiots in the room around me are going like, maybe he's telling the truth this time. Like, that's literally what's happening. And it's insane. It's insane that it's happening. Like, we are this dumb, right? Like, we are this dumb. Ugh. Other measures, like giving unions standing at our International Trade Tribunal, could be interesting, if modest development. In 2019, the United Steelworkers secured a victory at the tribunal after it found that 4 countries had been dumping steel into the Canadian market, harming domestic industry. The proceeding only began because a private company filed the... What's a recession? Only real policy wonks picked up a particularly radical proposal from O'Toole's platform. The Conservatives are pitching a super EI that would temporarily provide more generous benefits to employees in a recession. 75% of their previous salary as opposed to the 55% status quo. So that's just liberalism, right? Like, that's just some liberal shit right there. Like, this is what's so embarrassing about the liberals right now, right? Is that they're being out-liberaled by the conservatives. That the liberals could be standing up and saying exactly all of this. Like, they could be running this grift too. They could be saying all this nonsense bullshit, right? They just don't, right? Which flows into my larger sort of point about the liberals these days, which is that I think Trudeau is done. I think he's ready to go. Like, I think he wants to retire. I think he wants to leave. I don't think he wants to be the prime minister anymore. How do I know that's the case? Because he's not running a campaign, right? Like, he's letting himself get outflanked on the left by the conservatives, who are obviously sociopathic liars. So, like... But that's not the radical part. Oh, here we go. In determining when a province falls into a recession, O'Toole would use the SOM rule, a thus far relatively obscure definition of recession that tracks unemployment, not GDP growth. Okay, this is actually kind of interesting because, as I say on this channel over and over and over and over and over and over again, neoliberalism is a farce. It is a fraud. It doesn't work. It's not an economic system. It is a religious ideology. I will fight anyone who thinks otherwise. Like, it's childishly easy to point out how failed a system neoliberalism is and how it is not an economic system. And one of the big hallmarks of neoliberal capitalism is its manic drive to venerate GDP growth and use GDP growth in a manner that the inventor of GDP tracking said, do not use it for these purposes. right? That tracking GDP growth was actually invented for a very specific, very narrow reason, right? That, oh, you gross domestic product, you want to track that for just like a very narrow bandwidth, useful sort of thing off in a corner. But to treat it like it's the only thing that matters for your whole economy, even the guy that invented it said, no, don't do that. That's dumb. Don't do that. That's dumb. And there are many cases where GDP growth lowering is actually good, right? It's actually good for the society to have GDP growth go down. But at the very least, the conservatives are starting to acknowledge that, oh, we've been financially illiterate this entire time while pretending like we know what's going on. We currently consider ourselves to be in a recession when the whole country sees a contraction in its GDP over 2 consecutive quarters. It's a useful definition because it's an international standard, but it's not always reflective of the real health of an economy. Oh, yeah. So everybody's been doing this wrong because neoliberal capitalism is a scourge that has inflicted the entire planet. And now we're starting to say, oh, maybe we should actually track real things, like unemployment, right? Like real stuff that actually happens. O'Toole, for purposes of EI anyway, would consider a province or territory to be in recession if the employment rate raises by 0.5 percentage point over a quarter. A recession ends under this application of the Somme rule after 3 months of job gains. Of course, job gains could be like, yeah, you work 5 hours a week, right? Like, job gains is always going to be like the least, like, oh, a guy is working 5 jobs, so job gains, right? The Somme rule to this point has largely been used for analysis, not policymaking. Nevertheless, Claudia Sam, who came up with it, was giddy to see it in the conservative platform. I jumped for joy, Sam wrote in a recent blog post. Yes, of course it's cool to see my Somme rule in a platform. What really makes me happy is that the unemployment rate, not politics, would decide when the unemployed would get extra financial support. Here's a crazy idea, just spitballing. How about we give people support regardless of their employment status? How about, crazy idea, crazy thought, how about everyone just gets support? And that it's not tied to anything whatsoever. That you get enough support to have food and shelter. And that is a guarantee, and it's built into the system, and there isn't some stupid, wonky, little checkbox, little means test, little dumb thing that you gotta go through in order to pretend as though people should now have food and shelter, right? And of course, all of these analytics, yeah, you're telling me that a conservative government, especially after I read this, where literally intel that would have been absolutely crucial for Canadians to know about a housing market, that was suppressed for 25 years. You're telling me that the same governments are going to be completely honest about unemployment numbers? Going to be completely honest with, it's the unemployment. Yeah, it only went down by 0.3%, so no extra benefits, right? None of that kind of shit. Right? Like, this is so obvious, like, capitalists, like, this right here is capitalists getting on their knees and being like, please let us keep being in charge. Please let us keep abusing the elderly and the disabled and the poor. Please let us keep just destroying the country and destroying the society so that a couple of guys can get a couple of billion extra dollars. Please? We'll let you pretend like we care about your opinion. We'll let you vote for a guy so he'll sit on a board and we'll ignore him, right? Like this is conservatives and this is capitalists negotiating. We should not be negotiating with these guys. Our entire platform should be get rid of the capitalists. Get rid of them. Do not negotiate with them. They're not even willing to offer rational things. They're not even willing, like, if these guys were coming out and saying, hey, we're going to do a basic income, I would be like, okay, cool. Now you're rational, right? Now you are someone that might be worth negotiating with. That's not what they're doing, right? They're doing basic liberalism, offer the barest minimum, and then make sure you don't do that in the first place and undercut it as best you can. And a gullible, rubish population is just gonna go, oh, look, it's a worker. Yeah, he's putting a worker on the, yeah. Like, none of that is gonna matter. None of that is gonna matter. They're still gonna fucking get rid of you the second it makes them a penny. They're still gonna undercut you. You're not gonna be able to buy that stupid house, right? None of that shit's gonna happen. They're still gonna send cops against you as you're homeless on the street. They're still gonna do all of that shit. Everything is gonna be completely normal. It's well, completely as it is now. Except, oh, now there's a worker on the board. Yeah, I'm so happy that I let the conservatives come in and gut everything so that we could fucking get a worker on the board. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and something for the gig workers. Yeah, here we go. It's taken this election for politicians to finally start talking about what it means to protect workers in the gig economy. They don't give a fuck about these guys. Like, these guys are the degenerates. These are the people that politicians spit on. Tell them to get a better job. Tell them to get another job, right? Like, they don't give a fuck about these guys at all. So let's listen to this gullible, rubish bullshit that you have to absolutely, like, put a fucking nail in your head to actually believe. Gig workers who do everything from drive Uber to delivery groceries to coding and designing, you know, actual workers who are actually doing the actual work of the society, while the conservatives go off and do fucking nothing important whatsoever, which is why we should get rid of the capitalists. Probably outnumbered shy of 2 million before the pandemic, would likely only increased in numbers since then. Around 3 million Canadians are self-employed or freelance, according to Statistics Canada. These workers, generally speaking, don't have any benefits we associate with employment. If they want supplementary health insurance, employment insurance, Canada Pension Plan benefits, they have to pay for it all themselves, which is the goal of the Conservative Party. It's to get rid of these people and ultimately to dismantle all of these things, right? The Conservatives are proposing a rather elegant solution. Oh, an employee savings account. Gig economy companies would have to pay contributions. Oh, so they would have to pay for it. Equivalent to CPP and EI premiums into gig worker accounts where it will sit tax-free to be withdrawn when needed. Maybe actually call these guys workers. Maybe actually insist that they get supports. Why are we insisting that people's support is tied to working for a capitalist? Why are we insisting that people's support, whether they get food and shelter, is tied at all, under any circumstances, for any reason, to this capitalist death cult? Can anyone explain that to me? Can anyone explain to me the rationale, on any level, in any way, of subserviating ourselves to a death cult in order to get food and shelter? Why are we tying these two things together? We've already all agreed that doing that with healthcare was an incredibly bad idea. You think doing the same thing with food and shelter is a good idea? That's the goal of all of this, by the way. The goal of all of this is to convince gullible morons to keep subserviating themselves to a capitalist death cult that wants to continue throwing people into the streets, that wants to continue destroying the civil society, while you do all the work and they do nothing important whatsoever. So, the conservatives are an employee savings account. Gig economy companies would have to pay contributions. So gig economy companies would have to start treating their workers as if they were workers. Whoa! Big fundamental changes here, guys. Fundamental shifts in the way the society operates. Companies have to treat workers as if they're workers. Holy fuck. Here's a better idea. Support workers. The workers will turn around and tell these companies to fuck off or die, and hopefully many of those companies will die because they're sociopaths. And then the companies that actually want to stick around will be like, well, better actually offer things. Better actually treat workers like human beings, right? Nope. Instead of that, we're going to tie everything to the workforce. So if you don't work, you starve. That's the capitalist system. Sure glad we're negotiating with that. Sure glad we're voting conservative, yucka-lucka-luckles. We're a bunch of fucking rubes, man. It's hardly a replacement for a good pension plan or an actual safety net. Without employee contributions and considering the hours worked by these employees, these funds will likely be quite modest. Yeah, fucking irrelevant. And yet, it's more than other parties are proposing. No, it isn't. Straight up, no, it's not. Like, unless you're trash. Like, unless you genuinely believe that the capitalist death cult is actually interested in helping anybody. Like this fucking moron is, obviously. Like, the capitalist death cult is interested in abandoning us and lying to us while doing it. Like, do you guys not realize, like, do Canadians not realize that, like, these conservatives are shameless? That they will lie about literally anything? And do so shamelessly? Aaron O'Toole, Social Democrat. Oh my god. It seems unlikely that the measures outlined above will start peeling off new Democratic voters or convince the Marxists, Leninists, and Communists to put aside their differences to get behind Aaron O'Toole. This is a huge win for us. This is a huge win for the Communists. This is a huge win for people like me. The biggest reason, the number one reason why I'm going through this article like this so thoroughly and being so fucking aggressive about it is to just point out how massive a win it is. That Maclean's, while publishing an article that's literally wanking Aaron O'Toole off, pretending like he's a social democrat and not a fucking sociopath, like literally sitting there with a knife covered in blood, is the fact that they have said Marxists, Leninists, and Communists. Like, we're here. Hello. Pay attention to us. We are real. We exist. We are going to destroy the capitalist system. That is the goal. We don't believe this horse shit. We know that this is horse shit. If you believe this, you are extremely gullible. Like, extremely, extremely, extremely gullible. Right? That you no longer, like, you shouldn't make decisions for yourself. Right? You genuinely should not be making decisions for yourself if you're reading this article and being like, wow, Aaron O'Toole, a socialist? What a time to be alive, right? Don't fucking make decisions for yourself. Let's see what you guys have been saying. I'm just going to pause for a minute. Time to start looking for a new country to call home. Fascism has no use for people like us. Oh, Dave, yeah. Something to that, bud. I've been thinking about that. I have friends in other countries. Like, I don't know. It might be time to start taking these fascists up on it. Just be like, yeah. If you don't like it, then leave. Yeah, okay. Okay. I just don't know if I could, I'm so tired of moving. I'm so fucking tired of it. I've moved, like, on average once every 8 months. It's so fucking exhausting to do. Ruth is saying now the problem is that all the protest is most likely to push people to the cons because Jagmeet is brown, even if they like him a lot. Well, they say they like him a lot, right? Like, you know, like, I'm sure that, like, the white slave owners in the South said that they liked their slaves. I'm sure that they were completely happy. Like, oh, that boy over there? Yeah, that boy's great. He's a great boy. Yeah, free him. No. Like, it's pretty straightforward in my view. It really did seem the plan was to coast on people being happy. He happened to be the PM during the pandemic and didn't completely and obviously fail. Yeah, and I mean, this is an interesting thing right here, Duke, is that, like, it does go to show you how fickle Canadians are. Most Canadians were saying, like, okay, we're going to have an election. I'm not upset about it. This was the average Canadian going into the election. Okay, an election, yeah, you know, I'm not upset about it. No, I'm not upset about it. No, of course I'm not upset about it. No, we need to have elections. You know, I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about it. I'm really upset about it, you guys. I'm super upset about the fact that we have to do an election. That's Canadians. And these liberals, like, literally were like, okay, it looks like everybody's going to be totally cool, right? We've been polling them. Everybody says, you know, everything's completely fine, all that kind of stuff. And now they did it. They moved forward, and now they've got, like, this weeping, angry country to deal with. And they're like, but you said everything was fine, right? Like, oh, my little pug. Oh, he gets it. You just want to say, shut up and let us have our socialist society. Yeah, Mark, there's something to that. Like, just like, why has it got to be such a fucking chore? Like, dealing with these capitalists is such a fucking chore. I'm going to publish a video tonight on Canadian housing and the election. Fantastic. Fantastic. I look forward to seeing it. All right. Let's get back to this catastrophe. So after the major victory of the Marxist-Leninists and the Communist Party, and yet these policies are serious, sensible, pro-worker, and decidedly conservative in purpose. Well, they are certainly decidedly conservative in purpose, right? Because the purpose is to continue maintaining the grift, that you do all the work while the capitalists do fucking nothing. They look particularly impressive when put next to the anemic New Democrat platform, which is verbose, yet shallow when it comes to the tough realities facing many workers in precarious jobs across the country. Yeah, because passing a basic income would be meaningless to those people, right? Putting in major permanent support systems would be meaningless to those people. Nobody can doubt the New Democrats' working class bona fides, but one can wonder if they suffer from a lack of competition on that front. What the fuck? Oh my god. The Liberals, meanwhile, need to convince workers that they and they alone can manage post-COVID recovery with compassion and competence. If O'Toole's policy book is any indication, the Liberals' job just got a whole lot harder. That's true. That final line is actually true. Because Canadians are gullible rubes who are completely willing to go along with any grift that they're told by anyone, they're actually looking at this, an article like this, and being like, oh, wow! O'Toole's a socialist! Like they're fucking morons that they are. And so the Liberals actually do have to be like, oh shit, the Conservatives came up with like a super good grift. Oh man, what grift are we gonna run? You don't think there will always be a class of people having to do work they don't want to. First of all, hey Cooper, how you doing, bud? I don't know if I've ever seen you here. Look, no one wants to do the work that must be done. Right? Let's be straight. No one wants to work in sanitation, right? No one wants to be a garbage man, right? No one wants to do these kinds of stuff. But the thing that you do is you, as a society, come together, actually talk about what should be done, right? The work that is valuable, right? David Graeber, who is a really great economist, God rest his soul, one of the central organizers of Occupy, wrote a book called Bullshit Jobs. And with his research, he argued that about 30 to 40% of jobs in the market are bullshit, that they're pointless, that nobody should do them because they aren't worth doing, that they exist exclusively because we have this mania, this absolute mania of connecting human survival with jobs, right? What we should be doing is we should be saying, okay, what jobs need to be done, right? Well, sanitation services, I think we can all agree, right? Like, we should have sewer systems. We should have water pipes, right? Electricity, right? These sorts of things. Yeah, these are things that are worth doing that everybody should do. And so instead of having one group of people who are extremely overworked, working 40 to 60 hour work weeks while getting paid like $70,000 to $80,000 a year, right? So they just grind into this. How about we have the amount of time that they work and spread that work into the workplace? Because you've got one group that's working their asses off, right? And then you've got another group that doesn't have enough work, right? But because everything is tied to whether or not you're working, instead of us just saying as a people, hey, maybe people should live in dignity and have food and shelter, and like those things should just be a given, right? And like, we literally could set up systems that say, okay, like, we have X amount of work to do in the society. So, John, we are going to ask you 10 hours, 20 hours a week, right? You need to be part of the sanitation services or the food production services or any of that kind of stuff. Click, clack, and literally spread it into the society, right? And always attempt to decline the amount of work that everybody needs to do, right? Until finally you're literally at a point where, like, Keynes genuinely believed that by now we'd be working a 20-hour work week, right? because that was the model that he was professing, that he was saying that we should do. Spread the work out throughout the populace, right? Everybody's working, so you have zero unemployment, right? You have zero unemployment. But of course, you can't have zero unemployment in a capitalist model because the capitalists need poverty. They need to ensure that scarcity exists because that's their whole model, right? Their whole model is based off of manufacturing scarcity. And so they have to ensure that about 5% of the populace is homeless, or unemployed, I should say. 5% of the populace is not homeless, 5% of the populace unemployed. Because then they can maintain wages, right? If everybody was employed, then suddenly guys can just start moving around and do what they want, and like wages start to be competitive, right? That's why capitalists always want, and that's why capitalists like homelessness, right? They like homelessness and they're willing to pay for homelessness, the outcomes of homelessness, because that lets them control wages. And they never want wages to go up. Wages is the number one cost of doing business. And so, like, there will always be people that need to do work that they don't want to do, but my feeling is that they shouldn't be a class. It should be everybody. That we should be spreading that work throughout the community, that everybody should have a hand in it. We should literally all be in it together. Like, I even go so far to be like, yeah, and then like we turn the society. So like the guy that was working in sanitation now goes and works at a grocery store, and then the guy that was working in the grocery store now goes and works over here, and like we literally click it around like this. This idea of specialists, I think, is cute. I do. I just think it's cute. Like, I don't necessarily buy into this idea that like, oh, you've been doing that. Who said this? There's this great quote, and I'm going to misattribute it. Is that there's no such thing. You don't work 20 years. You work 1 year 20 times. And like, what about skilled labor? Like, what I gotta be straight with you, man. Like, anytime anybody tries to pitch me on this idea of skilled labor and tell me how difficult their job is and all this kind of stuff, like, I go and I take a look at it and I see a job that could be done by pretty much anybody who has the ability to do it, right? And most of these things can be taught, like, and I think should be taught. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a society of people who were like welders, construction workers, builders, who knew the ins and outs of retail, who knew all this kind of stuff because they're constantly clicking around. Okay, like we're not going to see eye to eye on this. Like I just think that people elevate usually what they do to be like this incredible, oh, I and I alone and these skilled professionals that we work with. And I'm not saying it wouldn't require training. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that it wouldn't, like, you're not just going to, like, walk into it and just do it. But what I am saying is that a lot of that should be far more integrated, should be far more connected into the actual being and doing of the thing itself. And I find that this skilled labor conversation that we walk ourselves into is just a way to exclude people from learning about it. Just exclude them, because, again, the capitalist system infects the discourse that we need to create scarcity, right? You need to create scarcity. So how do you create scarcity? Well, I've got skilled labor. I've got a knowledge source that I'm not going to share with anyone unless you pay me to share it. And then you can start using it. Like, well, and of course, and then there's obviously like capability, right? There's obviously like capability that comes into it. But like, I get very like, when it comes to skilled professionalism, like people who really stand up and start talking about skilled profession, it's just a way for them to manufacture scarcity. It's just a way for them to clutch onto a knowledge set, teach no one, ensure that they in their tiny little cabal have access to that information, and create a whole bunch of roadblocks. It's not integrated into a society. It's not integrated into the society whatsoever. Training being built into the job is how a lot of trade works, though. Yeah, and so let's expand that. And like if I want to become a carpenter, I literally have to move out of the city of Toronto. Like, nobody's teaching it here. I've looked into it several times, right? If I wanted to learn carpentry, if I want to learn basic stuff like welding, that kind of shit, I literally have to leave the city of Toronto. Like, it's a manufactured scarcity. So your idea is that we teach everybody everything and be mediocre, like you need specialized trades. Well, I mean, okay, like I'll concede it. Why not? This is my favorite thing to do when I get into arguments. I'll just concede. Just be like, oh, okay. Then the people who show the skill at doing so can go and do that if they would like, right? But what I'm seeing right now is such a heavy, like, the justification for why we pay grocery workers $0, why we pay them and treat them like shit, why is that? Oh well, anybody can do that, right? We've got specialized knowledge. We're special. You're poor, right? Like so, and there's no, and that seems built in. What if an education system gave everyone a general knowledge about everything? It would fix the problem of lack of surplus people in the workforce. Well, and this flows into my large complaint about the education system, is that I see the last 4 years of, like, I see high school as a complete waste of time. It's completely worthless. Like, it's completely worthless. Like, what do we teach kids in high school? Like, we're not teaching them ethics, certainly. So like that's why we've ended up in the situation that we're in now. We're not teaching them skills. We're not teaching them really anything important, right? Like literally, like everybody that graduates from high school forgets high school the second they graduate. It's not like it exists only as a control mechanism, only as a way to separate the obedient people from the non-obedient people, right? The people who are doing what they're told from the people who won't do what they're told, right? Like, that's the purpose of the education system. Give local 27 Carpenters Union a call. They'll set you up for the apprenticeship. No. I mean, good luck on that front. Like, that's not real. Well, I think it's important to be realistic, and when you can't answer that, I think that this is idealist and not compatible with real. Like, well, I mean, of course what I'm saying is idealist, dude. And, like, we would have to negotiate and figure out, like, how to arrange it. But, like, right now, this forced system of scarcity is a failure, right? Like, you've got a small group of people who are living in, like, their skilled profession of scarcity, being paid $100,000 or more a year, right? Who have every incentive whatsoever to maintain that scarcity in the society. Something's got to give. Like, something's got to give. And, like, you want to go and specialize in something? Fantastic. I want grocery workers to have food. Like, I want them to be able to eat, right? And this skilled labor grift that runs throughout the society is an excuse to withhold food and shelter from people. That's what it is. And like, how about structure your society so it just doesn't fucking matter, right? How about structure your society so it just doesn't fucking matter? That, like, people just can't fall into poverty. Just, like, literally eliminate it. And then if somebody wants to, like, really be a welder, like, someone's just like, yeah, welding, that's my jam, that's my shit. Well, off you go, right? I do think there's a legitimate specialization. There should not be a gap between wages. Well, there's always an underclass if you insist there's always an underclass, right? Like, that's the way the system is designed to be. Like, if the system is designed to have an underclass, then you're going to have an underclass. And our system is designed to have an underclass, right? Like, you can break that apart. You can break it up. Like, it's perfectly reasonable to believe that we can create a more egalitarian, more equitable society, right? And sure, you'll end up with people who know things that other people don't know, right? That's called being alive. But that should not be tied to whether or not where is there no underclass? I mean, in capitalism, like certainly if you're just accepting that capitalism should exist, then yeah, there's an underclass. Like, but you can get rid of that. You can move towards a system. Like, I mean, if you go to oh my God, what are they called? Why am I blanking on this? That's so annoying. Oh yeah, if you go to the communes throughout Manitoba, right? If you go throughout the communes that exist throughout Manitoba, right? There's general equality there. Nobody wants to study these places. Nobody wants to actually go in and take a look, right? Because that doesn't help the capitalist class. Conja the Wizard. That's a fun name, dude. That's a fun name. And honestly, Cooper, now this is starting to get into kind of smacking of communism's never worked anywhere. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? All right, so let's get into some federal government. Hey, Loaf, how you doing? Socialism would relieve us from the sordid necessity of living for others. Well, and like, it just seems really obvious to me that if you've got a group of people who are not working, who are unemployed, right, because that's the way the system is designed, and then you've got another group of people that are working their asses off, like, maybe spread that work a little bit. And if you want to get caught in the specialization argument and pretend like that matters, then you go ahead. But I prefer that everybody has food and shelter and work from there. But that's not the society we have. So as we can see here, this is as of August 30th, 2021, the Conservatives are now handily in the lead, right? I do think that the Liberals are giving up. Like, have you guys seen anything that convinces you that the Liberals are actually in this race, right? Like, are we actually in a position where the Liberals, like, what are they doing? Like, they came out with a statement recently. Here you go. So just the other day, the comment said, "Liberal climate announcement is a strong boost to its climate plans." This is like preaching to the liberal choir, right? Amongst liberals, climate change is the number one thing. Oh yeah, Conja, I'm pretty concerned with this election and how much ground the conservatives are gaining right now, for sure. I'm very concerned about that. And I'm concerned that it's just kind of the classic liberal, like, oh, well, we've got to move forward. Like, to maintain this system of capitalism, we have to commit austerity against the populace. Because if we actually taxed away the capitalist wealth, then the capitalists would cease to exist. So we can't do that, right? We can't tax away the wealth of the capitalists. So the only thing that's left is austerity. We don't want to do that because we're liberals, right? And we have a soft little heart, right? And so what they're doing is they're just taking the knee, and they're just going to let the conservatives go in and do what conservatives do, right? And what conservatives do is commit austerity. That's what they do. And the conservatives will be the bad guys, and all of the conservative voters will be like, it had to have been done, and because they're delusional and they're stupid and they don't know anything about how the government works or how any of this actually functions, which really is what lets them stand up and say, like, oh, the solution is no government, right? Yeah, okay, bud, that's the solution for sure. Chaos will reign, right? That's the solution. And so in the midst of this total shellacking that the liberals are taking, they're standing up and saying, yeah, we're gonna boost our plan to get rid of all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Canada is the most polluting amongst the G7. We are for sure the most polluting already. So the liberals might as well say that they're going to get us to net zero by tomorrow, right? Like they can say what they want, right? This smacks of desperation. It's not even an attempt really to shore up their own base. Like it's pretty disheartening to see the liberals kind of just like completely give up. Like, that's what this is. Like, what else could it be? It's just them not offering anything, not actually addressing any of the serious concerns that exist within their own party and within the populace. They're just going to bend the knee, let the Conservatives take over, commit austerity, and then when people get mad at the Conservatives, the Liberals will turn around and be like, hey, we're Liberals, we're better, right? Remember us? And then we'll give the ball back to the Liberals, and guess who wins? The capitalists, right? And I could argue for no government in the sense of imprisoning everyone currently in government and replacing with a simple lottery of ordinary citizens. I think that would actually be an improvement. I think that would be an improvement. Just a straight up lottery. I think it couldn't be worse than this shit, right? No, but the problem with a simple lottery is like, you absolutely are going to end up, because of the way the capitalist system works, right? That the true owners of the society are the billionaire class. They own these politicians. And if you had just like a simple lottery, there's every reason for... No, what we need now is to get behind a party or an organization that's saying that they want to tax away this wealth. That's what we need more than anything right now. We need that wealth to be taxed away. Like, that should be the number one concern for Canadians right now, because all of the problems that we are facing are connected to it. That if you were working on a project, right, and you kept like let's say you were coding something or whatever, right, and you kept punching in something and you kept having the same error and it kept taking you back to the same problem, and it just everything you did, it kept going back to this same problem over and over again. Well, there does come a point where you need to bite the bullet and say, okay, we need to address that problem, because we can't move forward until we've actually addressed that issue. And the issue that we are all facing is that billionaires are psychopaths, right? That they literally destroy the society. They literally, by their existence, just by the fact that they exist, they dismantle the civil society. And we've seen what these billionaires are using their money for. Like, we know that they're not helping anybody. We know they're doing everything to destroy this place. So we have to get rid of them, which is why it's a bit disappointing to me that we're not all just getting behind the NDP, as the NDP is standing up and saying we are going to tax the wealthy, right? The Liberals aren't saying that, the Conservatives aren't saying that, and yet for some reason people genuinely take the Conservatives seriously, which, I mean, it's just like watching someone get beat up, right? Like it's like I'm watching somebody who just wants to get beat up, like a battered housewife, right? They just want to be beat up by their husband, and we keep saying to them, like, get away from this guy, like, get away from this guy, like, what can we do about it? Like, all we can do is sit back and watch as they just keep going back and just keep going back and keep saying, please, sir, can I have some more? And they just keep getting the shit kicked out of them. But, like, that's Canada. That's Canadians for us. To me, a Conservative victory would be disastrous, given the debt bubbles that have yet to pop, inflation, and a little time we have left to address climate change. Well, I mean, we're already in a position. So, drought shrinks Canada's wheat crop to 14-year low, shrivels canola harvest, right? And we've got a plethora of other articles coming out here that are all talking about large-scale crop failures, right? Nonlinear temperature effects indicate severe damages to U.S. crop yields. Suitable days for plant growth disappear under projected climate change. Determining climate change effects on U.S. total agricultural productivity. The hardest thing to deal with in the coming years is going to be the famines. That's going to be the hardest thing to deal with, and we already are going to be faced with them. We will not avoid them. That we have ignored this crisis so thoroughly, and we have empowered the worst psychopaths possibly in human history with such ungodly sums of wealth, and they have lied to us so effectively that the famines are unavoidable at this point. That I recommend everybody, like, have a couple of bags of rice, right? Like, store up just a little bit of something, to get you through the lean years, because the lean years are coming. And it's not us here in Canada. Cooper, I sincerely hope that this Stalin reference is not in reference to famine. Like, please, 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 do not bring that shit in here. Like, I will happily school you on this. But the famines are going to be the worst. And, like, it's going to have our children, like, I keep saying it over and over and over again. Like, our children are going to spit at us. Like, they're going to spit at us. No, the greatest... Cooper. Like, I guarantee that you don't know anything about Stalin. Nah. No. Not even close, bud. Not even close. Like, I guarantee that you don't know anything about Stalin. Like, typically what people like to throw at me is, oh, he did such horrible things. And I'm like, yeah, the Nazis. Like, the fucking Nazis and, like, feudal kings who were attempting to eviscerate his own populace. Like, what are you talking about? And, like, the greatest psycho? Literally, Adolf Hitler wrote a book that was about destroying Jews. Like, he literally wrote a book called Mein Kampf that he walked around with, that within it said we should destroy the Jews. Like, I think that there are U.S. presidents who are far more dangerous. His own people? When? Like, what are you even talking about, dude? Like, the fun fact about Stalin, like, the dude tried to step down on 4 separate occasions and his own people wouldn't let him do it. Like, he was a very popular leader. He has a very popular legacy. Like, recently Putin was able to stand up and sort of critique Lenin. He said of Lenin that Lenin was not a statesman, he was a revolutionary, which, in my view, sort of tips Putin's hand in regards to his critique of, like, I mean, the Tsars were the statesmen then? Like, that's essentially what he's saying there, which sort of shows you where his allegiance is and shows you where his vision for Russia actually is. But, like, Putin doesn't critique Stalin, right? And there's a reason for that, because Stalin is still very popular in Russia. Like, people like Stalin. And there's good reason for it. Like, go read his Wikipedia page. I always tell this to people. Go read Stalin's Wikipedia page. Like, there's a bunch of Western language all over it, but, like, near as I could tell, he was a dude who was attempting to do the best thing for his own people, and his own people acknowledge this. Like, the Western propaganda surrounding Stalin is crucial. It's crucial for propagandists to diminish Stalin's legacy, because Stalin, in my view, was relatively successful, right? Like, people say this all the time. Oh, communism has never worked. I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, under Lenin and Stalin, the communists of Russia were able to industrialize the country, defeat the Nazis in World War II, and then we're the first nation into space. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, people saying this shit to me, I'm just like, and I know that's not what you're saying to me right now, Cooper, but, like, it all ties into that. And it's all just this idea that, like, oh, when has communism ever worked? Fucking literally the Soviets. Like, literally. Yeah, Mach, always got my back, Mach. Industrialized Russia, taking from a backward semi-feudal society to a world superpower. Killed 10 million Nazis. Yeah. That's my favorite, eh? We've got, here in Canada, we've got something called the Victims of Communism Memorial. It was started by Stephen Harper and funded by, and is still being funded by these liberals. And my absolute favorite is that the Victims of Communism Memorial includes the Nazis in it. So, kind of tells you where we're at as Westerners, right? Like, when Jordan Peterson walks around saying, we need to protect Western civilization, I often start to think, like, do you also mean the Nazis? Like, when you say we need to protect Western civilization, do you mean also the Nazis? Like, is that part of what the Western civilization you're looking to protect? And if not, then, like, who gives a fuck about them? Like, yeah, the Russians own them. Bubblegumpy, people don't understand that a UBI would also have a social effect so that people didn't stay in abusive relationships if they just step out the door. Yeah. Lenin was a sick man, and no, he didn't have much time to live, so he had to squeeze in a lot of stuff in a short period of time. Are you talking about the other Lenin? John Lennon? Is that who you're talking about? Lenin was a sick man? Like, what do you mean? I will never cease to be impressed by the development he took the USSR through. Well, the development of what the USSR through is like astounding. It was the fastest growing economy of that century. Like it was absolutely incredible. Like once you take off the colonial glasses, like once you take off like the Western colonial, we own Russia and everybody outside of our borders is evil glasses, and you just take a look at the events and the history of the place. And especially if you can actually put yourself in their shoes. Right? I actually really like Joseph Stalin's Wikipedia article for this, because it really does, like, yeah, you can see they're taking some digs at him here and there, but, like, okay, buddy, thanks, buddy, you got him. My dog. Milo, you got him, bud. You got him. But if you go through the article, like, they start at his youth. Okay, guys, sorry, my guy's convinced. Okay, buddy. There's nothing there, buddy. I know. You scared them away because you're big and strong and tough. He's big and strong and tough, he is. Little pug. The strongest little pug that was ever a pug. Good boy, buddy. Hey, you want some peanut butter? Okay, here you go. Here you go. Come have some peanut butter. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. Ugh. Like, Stalin's life story, even before he joins the Bolsheviks, is really interesting. Press X to pet dog. Exactly. And if you can just, like, get on board with the idea that the Russians are people too, then you can see some really, really interesting shit go down. And a lot of the stuff that we hear in regards, like, a lot of the propaganda that we receive is, like, literally Nazi propaganda. Like, literally Nazi propaganda. Like, propaganda that was created by the Nazis and has just sort of held on, right? And big surprise, like, a lot of the people who immigrate from that region, right? A lot of the people who immigrate from, like, the Eastern European nations and stuff are literally banished Nazis who flee overseas and then settle here in Canada out in the middle of the boonies somewhere, right? And yeah, of course they're going to stand up and say, yeah, the communists were bad. Like, and then you start to question, I've done this. You want to see some people get fucking uncomfortable, right? Start asking questions to people who are like, oh, I had family back in Ukraine or any of these places, and they were treated so badly. It's like, oh, you had family back then. What did they do? And you don't need to ask a lot of questions. They get uncomfortable real fast. Oh, they were farmers. Oh, so they were like the big industrial farmers throughout that period. Oh, yeah, who were they supporting? Which side were they on? They weren't with the communists, so. And then you find out very quickly, like, it takes maybe 5 minutes of uncomfortable silences and odd questioning, right? Before it becomes pretty plain that what their family was doing was Nazi collaboration, right? So it's like, oh, like I don't see why we're taking everything on the face of it. USSR under Stalin in comparison to the United States had lower crime rates, lower mortality rates, higher second education, higher life expectancy, higher adult literacy rates, and more. Look at you mocked. It's like you're that's mocked, yeah? It's like you're it's like you're an infomercial. An infomercial for communism. Is your country suffering from neoliberal capitalism? Well, have we got a solution for you? All right, well, and with that, it's time to play the song. Many of you know the song. Some of you might not. If the newcomers are still in the chat, I hope you're still here, because this is my favorite part of the thing. I've lost my pick. Give me a second. There it is. This song, I call this song the Care Bear Stare. I call this song the Care Bear Stare against neoliberalism. Because if everybody on the planet started to sing this song all at once, there's nothing these neoliberals could do about it. This song is called Antarctica is Covered in Ice. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm of telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. Everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice. everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know that we can do it. I know even as we are facing drought, even as we are facing famine, even as we are facing war, even as we are facing climate change, I still believe and I know that we can prevent the worst of it. And I know that we can do it because the solution could not be easier. That all we have to do, we don't need to create something. We don't need to make anything. We don't need to do anything. What we need to do is stop. And that if we stop, then we will bear witness to the immense power of the earth as it proceeds to heal itself. That this place was a garden before we got here. And if we stop, then we will see that our attempts to destroy the planet were nothing more than a tiny child squalling in his mother's arms. And if we want to be here to witness the earth's majestic power as it heals itself, then all we have to do is stop. Hey, Aga, how you doing today? Good to see you. And yeah, Nova Scotia Commie. I've met several ex-citizens who say they were better off in Soviet times. Well, and the former Soviet states have been polled, and most of them agree with you. Like, most of them want to go back to a communist model, right? They say that things were better under communism. And it's for obvious reasons, right? You don't have this worthless, parasitic, neoliberal class that does no work, provides no value, siphoning wealth away into offshore accounts and shit, right? Like, to me, it's no different than saying, like, man, I feel better now that I don't have this parasite. Like, now that I don't have a parasite siphoning energy away from me, I feel better. And people are like, man, I wish I went ahead and put that parasite inside of myself, and things are better without the parasite. Like, yeah. Like, yeah. And the famines are going to be the hardest part. That I don't think we avoid. And, like, the real talk is that, like, what Canadians are going to experience is price increases. That food will increase in price, but it will still be on the shelves, right? But the places we export to, right? Like, because Canada exports to a lot of places. Those places are going to get fucked. Like, I'm very, very concerned for, like, India, the African nations, you know, the places that usually eat it when the capitalist nations need to, you know, tighten their belt. What a brutal statement, eh? What a brutal thing to say, tighten your belt, right? Telling people to tighten their belt, like, Jesus, like, literally you're going to eat less, so you're going to lose a bunch of weight, so tighten your belt. Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Meanwhile, there's a billionaire class that's just like, you know, oh, are they going to tighten their belts? No. Those guys are going to stay nice and big and fat. Nice and big and fat. But, like, drought has shriveled Canada's wheat crop to its smallest in 14 years, and its canola harvest to a 9-year low. And, I mean, you can take a look at what's going on throughout the States as well. Yeah, I think buyers around the world have already made major shifts. A lot of rationing has to happen. Canola importers may turn to Ukraine, Western Europe, and Australia for substitutes, while U.S. mills that depend on Canadian wheat produce flour may need to blend in wheat from other countries. So it's beginning. It's beginning. In other news, here is a communist party that actually appears to be active. That a sharp change in what I am used to experiencing here in Canada. My general opinion of communist parties that I see in Canada is that they are just that they've been taken over by capitalists who run them in order to ensure that communists can never organize, right? That if the communists want to organize and they go to like the Communist Party of Canada, well, they're not going to find anybody to talk to. They're not going to actually get organized. There's not going to be an actual movement. So here is a group called Vote Communist, and they're at votecommunist.com, and they have several candidates. I'm going to read these out just in the off chance. So if you live in Calgary, Edmonton, Edmonton in Griesbach or Mill Woods, Calgary Forest Lawn, Esquimalt, Saanich-Sooke in British Columbia, Saanich Gulf Islands, Surrey Centre, Vancouver East, Vancouver Kingsway, or Victoria, you have a communist running. If you're in Manitoba, Winnipeg South Centre, Winnipeg North, New Brunswick, Fredericton, North Nova Scotia, Central Nova, or Halifax. Here in Ontario, there's one in the beaches. Glory, glory, mercy me. I should reach out. Guelph, Hamilton Centre, Ottawa South, Toronto Centre, Toronto Danforth, as well as University Rosedale. In Quebec, Hochelaga, LaSalle, and Laurier. And then in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon University. So, yes, that's what that's called, right? You honeypot, right? You create a. Let's take a look at the term. What does it mean to honeypot? Because I kind of know what you mean, but like I'm a little. It's a container where honey is kept. No, we need to go to Urban Dictionary. No. Here you go. A honeypot is a network-attached system set up as a decoy to lure cyber attackers and to detect, deflect, or study hacking attempts in order to gain unauthorized access to information systems. The same goes vice versa, in which a hacker tries to distract a company with a mock-up attack, precede the main hack, right? Yeah, so it's like, it's a honeypot. You're just setting up an institution to just deflect energy and just diffuse it, right? It's not exactly what I was thinking, but sure, I'll go along with it. So I'm glad to see that there seems to be, all of the sudden, and this actually came from one of my Patreons, who put in the Discord a link. She literally just saw a votecommunist.ca sign, and I just came here. Okay, buddy. He's feeling really barky today, man. He's usually not this barky. It's ghosts. It's extra ghosts today. Extra ghosts today. So here is an interesting thing that's coming out of O'Toole. Conservatives would balance budget with economic ramp-up and without cuts. This is obviously bullshit. Yeah, there's a communist running here in Halifax. She has a Facebook page. We'll respond. It sometimes take a day or two. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right? And she's probably also working a full-time job, right? At a campaign event from the party's broadcast centre at Ottawa Hotel, the Tory leader said Canada effectively borrows more than $40 million each day, resulting in a $354 billion deficit. Like, this is inaccurate. It drives me crazy that this deficit conversation, like, Canada is not borrowing money, right? Like, nations with their own currencies do not borrow money. This grift, this constant misinformation that we're going to... didn't Ford say... I don't remember if Ford outright said he wasn't going to do cuts. Yeah, listen. Ford said he wasn't going to do cuts. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's so obvious. Like, even fashionmagazine.com is saying, like, hey, here's everything that he cut. And when you actually go through the list, it's horrific. Like, it's horrific. Like, this is one of the most evil figures in Canadian political history. Like, for sure. Even the Harper administration didn't commit austerity as bad as this guy did. Even the Harris administration didn't commit austerity as bad as this guy did. Like, this is one of the most brutal people who have ever been in politics here in Canada, period. Like, you got to go all the way back to, like, I voted for residential schools. Like, I voted for the genocide of the First Nations people to find worse politicians than this. The grift is the con's big card in this election. Well, I mean, they're at a point, and I said this, like, we are effectively in just say anything to get the majority territory. Like, we don't care. Like, we're just gonna say what needs to be said. We're just gonna and O'Toole is trying to have it both ways. He's trying to maintain the deficit grift, which is the idea that Canada borrows money and that a deficit is a debt that you got to pay back, and that future generations will pay back, and all this kind of stuff. It's like literally not how it works at all. That it's not a loan. Like, you're not taking a loan out from the bank, right? You're the government. You're responsible for money creation. Like, there are balancing issues that have to be done, but there is actually no such thing as government revenue. Like, that's literally not how it works. Yeah, Alex Jones put it best. Ford looks like an evil weasel that just got caught. Well, and you know, if Alex Jones is nailing you, right? You know you're in big trouble if Alex Jones gets you. Oh, hey, Matthias, you snuck in there. Your thing looks pretty much like Duke's, so I thought that you were just Duke, saying more stuff. But here you snuck in. And, like, O'Toole said that if elected, he will roll out more stimulus spending. But we all know how he's going to spend that money, right? Like, he's not going to shore up the CERB. He's not going to do that. What's he going to do? He's going to give money to billionaires, right? He's going to give a bunch of money to the billionaire class. Because that's how neoliberal economics works. That's how the failed system, the religious ideology of neoliberalism works. We will help highly affected sectors caught by the pandemic so that those jobs are preserved, because jobs matter more than people, remember. We will grow the economy so that we can get back to balance in a responsible and equitable way without cuts. Yeah, right. Conservative officials have said robust economic recovery on which the Tory plan rests assumes annual GDP growth of roughly 3%, a target reached only since 2011. Yeah, like, it's... Why is the populace so fucking gullible? Like, this is like really, really gullible. Like, already, like, my conservative minority territory, like, did you see what the Ford administration did? Didn't you see what the Kenney administration did? Didn't you see what the Pallister administration did? Like, didn't you see what the Harper administration did? Like, you've seen this happen over and over and over and over and over and over. And yet here we are. And yet here we are. It's blistering at this point. Like, but I mean, it makes sense at the same time, because we still deny the existence of climate change, right? That the Conservative Party still denies the existence of climate change. And if you're willing to deny the existence of climate change, then there's nothing. Like, there's no limit to the depths of your gullibility and stupidity, right? If you're seriously walking around while you're, like, literally your food production manufacturers, while the people who are producing the food. This is what's so crazy to me, that the farmers that are actually producing the food are ringing the alarm bells, saying that climate change is here. We are experiencing drought. We are experiencing a decline. That it is here. And the party still says that climate change isn't real. And then on top of that, you got like all these guys that are, and it is straight white men. Like it's 100% what it is, straight white men walking around being like, well, Trudeau is not helping us, so we're gonna go to the worst capitalists. Because, and this is the true success of what's happening here in Canada, is that people think that the issues that they're facing are an issue of political parties, when what they are facing is an issue of economic systems. That capitalism itself is the problem. And if you vote for a pro-capitalist party, you're voting against your own interests by default. And people don't realize that. People don't understand that. They're still walking around pretending like capitalism is working. And like, oh, what are you talking about? The society is so nice. Like, literally, this society was built by slaves and genocide. So it better fucking look nice. Right? You just gotta sweep that all away. And pretend like it didn't happen, and then you can pretend like and then you can also pretend like the society is going to be maintained, right? Like, just keep pretending as though the temporary foreign workers program isn't a slave system. Keep pretending like the wage slave system isn't a slave system, right? Like, see how long you can continue pretending like this is a civil society when it's just a business. It's just a fucking business. And on that point, O'Toole doubles down on promise to return Canada to old emissions target. So, like, even while O'Toole is walking around saying, oh no, climate change is real, right? His base doesn't, but he's walking around saying climate change is real. But he's only willing to commit to, like, Harper's old emission targets. Not even close to good enough. Like, not even close to good enough. And then in the meantime, sing to target big money house flippers by hiking taxable amounts of capital gains. Here's something that would actually work. Like, here's something that would actually work, right? You tax the amount of capital gains that house hoarders and house flippers, house scalpers, if you like, have to pay. Well, it's no longer going to be profitable for them to do it, so they'll stop, right? It's a policy that'll actually work. Guy can't get any votes. What do you think the story is here, people? I hope you guys are all doing really well out there. I hope you guys are having a wonderful time. Let's read some nice tweets. Let's see if we got some nice tweets. It's just weird how many people don't pause to consider that housing should not be an industry driven by profit. Money should not determine whether or not a family has a roof over their heads. There should not be a financial benefit to throwing someone out of their home. This comes from Joshua Potash. This one's blanked out, unfortunately, but just looked at my wife's student loans. After paying for 11 straight years, never missing a payment, she now owes $9 less on just one of her loans. The original loan was for $5,839. She's now got it down to $5,830. That's just one loan. Please tell me how the system isn't broken. It's completely busted, man. Like, just the idea that we plunged our children into debt. Like, you think that it's rational to put kids through 12 years of school that are completely paid for, but the last 4 or 8, they need to take on enormous amounts of debt in order to specialize. Yet another argument for why I think specialization is kind of a grift. In order to specialize themselves and then, like, keep them saddled with this debt. So why? So that they have to work for capitalists. That's what it all comes back down to, right? All problems lead to the same fucking thing. Everything leads to the same fucking thing. We have billionaires in the society, right? And as long as we keep insisting that we need to have these billionaires, well, then things like student debt is going to exist. Yeah, funny how they're so concerned with children being in debt, but they're not concerned with children having their planet burned. Yeah, like there's just no, like, the abandonment is real, right? Like, the abandonment is real. Like, and there just does come a point where I start to ask myself, like, are these guys doing it on purpose? Are they, like, they're getting old and they know that they're going to be dead soon, right? And and they don't want to make the world a better place. They literally want to burn it down on their way out, right? Because they can't get over the fact that they're dying, right? They're so narcissistic and they're so privileged, and they've been told their whole life that the world revolves around them, and they accuse everybody else of wanting to have everything handed to them on a silver platter when they got fucking everything handed to them on a fucking silver platter. And and now they're reaching the moment of their death, and instead of turning around and thinking like, man, I better make some decisions to make this place better for my kids, they're genuinely thinking, nah, fuck them, I'm going to burn this place down on my way out. Like, has there been a worse generation than the boomers? Straight up, has there been? And now, at like the worst possible moment, when we are absolutely in desperate need of real leadership on the climate change file, well, what's happening? The boomers are flipping over to conservative. Just another big fuck you, right? And students get told for those 12 years they have to go to university too. Yep, super important. I paid $5,000 on an $11,000 car with 23% interest. After 15 months, I'd barely touched the principal amount for the loan. I stopped paying. They repoed the car. Yep, that's the way it rolls, Andrew. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. No, I mean, like, interest in my view is just wrong. Like, it's just like get rid of that shit. Like, get fucking rid of that shit. And my favorite thing is that if you actually say stuff like that, a bunch of people will jump up and tell you why capitalism will fail if you do that. Oh, if you do that, capitalism will fail. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, if you get rid of interest, then nobody will give it a loan. It's like, yeah, because capitalism is a coercive system that fails, right? It doesn't work. It's not actually an economic system. I mean, it's an economic system insofar as slavery is an economic system, but it's designed to collapse. It's designed to fail. And when you point it out, all of the defenders of capital will point out all the reasons why it will fail, and then say that the system is still good, that the solution is just more capitalism, you guys. I'm convinced that the real capitalists are just a mass of honed impulses and instinct. I mean, it isn't work that gets you that rich. Well, if you go into the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Morgans and all of them, there was a First Nations filmmaker named Aaron something or other. Hold on. First Nations filmmaker Aaron. I believe it was Aaron. I'm completely blanking on this guy's name. And he basically blew the whistle on how the wealthy communicate about their position, right? That they do see us as cattle. That they do, like, he made friends because he's a filmmaker, so he made friends with one of these rich people, and they see us as cattle to be moved about and controlled, and they raise their children that way, right? Because if you have a kid, that kid is essentially a prince, right? If you're a Rockefeller, you're basically a king. Like, there's no true difference between a king and a Rockefeller, right? Like, what's the like, I actually would argue that the Rockefellers are more powerful than kings, right? Is that who we're talking about, Aaron Russo? I hope so. Let me take a see. That's him. Yeah, that's him. And And he had a clip where he like outed a bunch of wealthy people, and he said exactly what I just said to you. He was just like, and no small wonder he died young, right? And then his death. Anyway, I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but America, Freedom to Fascism, right? A good watch. Gets into the Internal Revenue Service, income tax, the Federal Reserve System, national ID cards, human implanted RFID tags, dialed electronic voting machines, and on and on and on. Like this guy was big in the 9/11 Truth movement as well, because he sort of touches on similar stuff, but like it's all backed by it's very well documented, it's very well done, and there's a reason why they needed to get rid of this guy, and I'm more than a little convinced that they got rid of this guy. And in this video, he's very open about talking about how the wealthy view us just as cattle, just something to be controlled, something to be manipulated, so that they can maintain their position of wealth and have us do all the work. Keep them so busy and worried that they don't have time to think. That's the whole point. Yeah. Because their wages were decent, they see it as having worked and paid their way and cannot fathom how the erosion of wages and inflation and everything else makes that all impossible. Well, and a lot of these guys, like let's be real straight up. Like a lot of these guys like believe in Jesus. They have like that kind of Christian impulse. Like people like Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper was raised an evangelical Christian, right? He was raised in the same church as I was raised in. So I know what his backing is. Like I know what his history is. And if you're walking around saying that like Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, right? Then like, and I argue a little bit that for the evangelical Christian types who are like they think the end times are upon us, right? Like they think that the rapture is coming and that Jesus is going to come back and separate the white people from the brown people, right? And the white people will go off to heaven and the brown people will stay here on earth and will be turned into hell or whatever. And but they have a very like nihilistic fatalism built in to their belief system, because their belief system says two things. One, things will be better when we're dead. And so if you believe that things will be better when you're dead, you don't need to bother attempting to improve things, right? And then things will be better when Jesus comes back. And so if you see all this apocalyptic shit happening around you, well, no, we don't need to do anything about that. Why? That means Jesus is coming back, right? All you got to do is get right with Jesus. And if you're right with Jesus, when the rapture happens and when Jesus comes back, then you'll be on the right side. Why should we bother trying to stop any of this, right? Why should we bother? Oh, you're saying that it's human activity that did that. No, it's obviously Christ is coming back. Come on. Think with your head. Think with your head. I've got a magic book that tells me that Christ is coming back when the apocalypse is upon us. Here's the apocalypse that's here. So obviously Jesus is coming back. Come on, guys. Think. Like, this is deeply ingrained in the evangelical Christian ethos. There's a reason why conservatives are not willing to acknowledge the reality of climate change, right? And it's because they acknowledge the reality of Jesus Christ. I heard Chris Hedges mention that prosperity Christian doctrine replaced the more social doctrine in the early 20th century. That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. The prosperity gospel became the central, like it became what evangelical Christianity was all about. Like, if you are a good Christian, you will be rewarded with wealth, and it's completely central to the capitalist ethos as well, right? Oh, but big surprise! The modern Christian ethos aligns perfectly with the mythology surrounding capitalism, right? That capitalism is, oh, you just need to work hard and you'll be successful. And if you're not successful, you must not be working hard enough, right? Must be something wrong with you, right? Certainly has nothing to do with like the earth crushing you. We've all heard the phrase, right? Life is what happens when you're busy making plans. Like the amount of disrespect, the amount of disrespect that we have shown the universe and the earth with our pathetic little capitalist system, right? That we're literally walking around saying like, no, it's all up to you. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can do it. Work hard. And the earth is there being like, no, I'm pretty sure that if I want you to be fucking crushed, you're going to be crushed, right? I'm pretty sure that it doesn't fucking matter at all what you think. That if I want you to fall down to the earth and never get up, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? And it also completely obliterates from the discourse the reality, the truthful reality that eventually everyone falls down and never gets back up. That saying stand up straight with your shoulders back or pull yourself up by your bootstraps or any of this kind of stuff, like literally you're saying that to a system that guarantees that there will be a moment in your life where you will fall down and never get back up, right? And the disrespect that these capitalists show to the system that created them by insisting that, oh, it must just be your own failing, instead of like literally something built in to the system, that the system itself will eventually, one way or the other, bring you down. And instead of saying, well, because the system eventually, one way or the other, will bring you down, regardless of your plans, regardless of any of that kind of stuff, well, then we should create systems of support to ensure that when such a thing happens, as it definitely will, as a guarantee, that when such a thing happens, the citizens are taken care of. That's not what we do. That's fucking not what we do, right? We sort of mouth to that. We sort of pretend like we do that. But like the long-term care homes here in Toronto are bug-infested, mold-infested shitholes. That the Harris administration did what capitalists do and jammed himself worthlessly into the infrastructure. It's been a long time since I've seen America freedom to fascism, like literally 2006. So that's like 15 years. So I don't want to give it my stamp of approval because I was like 23 when I saw it, and I definitely was like still an evangelical Christian, and I definitely still was. I definitely was a 9/11 truther at the time. Like I definitely was deep in all of that shit. So I don't want to like 100% be like, yes, this gets the John Sanderson seal of approval. But I do seem to remember that it had good information. It does highlight like things like the Federal Reserve System. Like people don't understand about the Federal Reserve System. Like it's an abomination. Like the Federal Reserve System is owned by private banks. What the fuck are you talking about? Like what the fuck are you talking about? That like there are literally private interests that own the money supply in the United States. Like you've got to have a form of mental illness to think that that's correct, right? To think that the money supply should be owned by private interests. Like to me, that's no different than saying the military should be owned by private interests. Yeah, secret private. Well, they're not very secret. It's the Morgans, it's the Rothschilds, it's the Rockefellers, right? Like, oh, big surprise, the guys that have fucking names on the sides of buildings own shit. Like, and the RFID tags, when I was still an evangelical Christian, was very much like big red alarms because it had very much Mark of the Beast sort of stuff about it. And I mean, Aaron Russo's death was very suspicious. Like, how did Aaron Russo die again? Aaron Russo. Oh, I can literally click on this. We live in the future, you guys. Okay. I'm happy to be corrected here. Russo died at the age of 64 of cancer. But, I mean, you know, I'm always actually quite suspicious of this kind of thing. Like, we know that there's a gun that you can just go up to people and, like, give them cancer. Right? You can just shoot people with radiation, right? Like, don't you think it's a little weird that Jack Layton, right when he was, like, at the apex and about to seize power, suddenly gets cancer and dies? Isn't that a bit convenient, don't you think? Isn't that a bit odd, right? Oh, Hugo Chavez. Yeah, he just died of a heart attack. Yeah, completely normal for, you know, a military guy who's in a good state of health. You know, like, I'm not saying that that's the case, but if I suddenly found out that there was a CIA program that was walking around giving people cancer with cancer guns, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Hey, Gloria, how you doing? Good to see you. I think this is your first time in here. Everyone may be called comrade, but some comrades have the power of life and death over other comrades. Thomas Sowell. That's true. The left claims that the guilty party in a conflict is not the one who wants to take another person's good, but the one who defends his own. Nicholas Gomez de Villa, Colombian writer. The left claims that the guilty party in a conflict is not the one who wants to take another person's good, this is a very odd quote to me because the capitalist system takes people's labor every day, right? Like, that's the system of wage slavery that you live in, Gloria, that you sell yourself to a person you've never met. They take the surplus value of your labor, the majority of it at that, and you get enough to probably pay your bills, right? Maybe have a little side thing. Maybe get enough to buy a toy every so often. But, like, the value of your labor is definitely taken from you. So it's kind of an odd quote coming from Nicholas Gomez de Villa, because it sort of doesn't acknowledge that reality. But the one who defends his own, like, so capitalists get to accrue enormous sums of wealth built on the labor of other people, and once that massive accruement and hoarding of wealth begins to collapse the society, as it's designed to do, his complaint is that people want to redistribute the labor that they accrued for someone else who they don't meet. Very, very odd. Yeah, Thomas Sowell's a neolib. I mean, I don't know. That seems like an uncontroversial sort of statement, saying, but, like, I mean, if you don't have, like, if you're a neoliberal, then you have no economic backing, right? Neoliberals no longer have economic credibility, if they ever did, and the idea that like, and because they have no economic backing, like, they've never read Marx, they don't know anything about this, and because they have no economic, they haven't even read Adam Smith. And because they haven't read these things, right, they don't know anything. And so all they know is, I have all this wealth that my daddy gave me. And, oh, those bad people are coming to take my wealth. Like, that's as far as they ever get. They have no critique of the society. They have no larger understanding of what's happening in the society. Like, literally, they don't even understand their own basic history. And, like, the basic history of what's happened in their own town, let alone what's happened on the world stage. So, like, somebody like Nicholas Gomez de Villa, like, literally is just like, my daddy gave me a lot, it's mine, and that's it. And Gloria's spreading that around, so good for you, Gloria. A CIA version of polonium? What's polonium? Polonium. I hope you guys are having a good one, man. I hope this is a good one, because, like, I'm feeling a little tired, you know? I'm feeling a little tired today. And I feel like I'm not quite popping the way that I usually pop. But I hope you guys are having a good time. I hope this is a good stream. I hope you're enjoying yourself, because, like, if you guys aren't enjoying yourself, then what's the goddamn point? What's the goddamn point? Hey, Kian, how you doing? Polonium is a radioactive chemical element. Atomic number 84. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, like, why not just put it in a gun? Right? You can do it. Have you read Imperialist Canada by Todd Gordon? I have not. And Kian, the reason I've been kind of darting around your question is because that's actually a huge conversation. Oops. But you know what? Let's do it. And you guys know me. Google Maps. Google Maps. It's time to look at Google Maps. Google Maps. Google Maps. It's time to look at Google Maps. Google Maps. Google Maps. We like to look at Google Maps. Google Maps. Google Maps. We like to look at Google Maps. Oh, that was fun. That was fun. Russians use it to do undetectable assassinations. I mean, I am yet to see like an actual like document, right? I don't like speculation is fun and all, like, and I definitely will engage in that kind of stuff. But I need to see like core documents. I need to see something where it's like literally the CIA has leaked a document or something like this. Het YOLO Portal. How you doing, bud? Don't think I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you. All right, Kian, we're doing it. What do I think of this Kabul situation? I mean, did we ever genuinely think that the Americans were just going to leave Afghanistan alone? Did we ever genuinely think that that was all going to happen? No. Like, they're for sure always going to find a way to get back in. They're always going to find a way to go back in because there's too many resources. There's too much money in there, man. Like, there's gold in them there hills, right? Like, there's all kinds of crazy resources. And more importantly than even that, though, Afghanistan is an absolutely crucial military position for the United States. And the United States cannot allow Afghanistan to fall into the hands of the Chinese. They just can't let that happen. And the... I'll take a look around for it, Duke. I'll take a look around for it. Do you have anything that I should really search for? Because, like... Why wouldn't the CIA do this? Like, I can't think of one reason. So, here's what I understand about what's going on in Kabul, okay? So, the Americans pull their troops out. The Taliban basically takes over the country instantly because the country is like, yeah, we're not going to fight each other. That sounds stupid. I'd rather have the Taliban ruling than these fucking crazy fucking Americans blowing everything up. So, like, everybody put their arms down. The Taliban walked into Kabul, took it over. And near as anyone can tell, literally the Taliban, on the lead up to the Americans leaving, just walked around to every province and were just like, hey, we're going to take over after this, right? And everybody was just like, that's fine, right? And the fighting that is currently happening, the fighting that I have heard about that is happening pre the Americans sort of relaunching their attacks, which... Just stay the fuck out. Just stay out. Like, all you're doing by attacking the Taliban is entrenching them, right? That what would happen if you left Afghanistan alone and you actually cared about its development socially is that eventually the people themselves will create their own movements and create their own internal political organizations and challenge the power of the Taliban. And the Taliban will either reform or leave power, right? And, I mean, that might happen because of a civil war. Like, that's possible. But the worst possible thing to do is to get involved again, right? But what the Americans are attempting to prevent is... so, at the Kashgar Prefecture here in China is the end of the Belt and Road Initiative, right? If you don't know what the Belt and Road Initiative is, the Belt and Road Initiative is the largest... it is an enormous high-speed rail system that originates in China and goes throughout the whole rest of the world. You can see these red lines indicate rail, right? If you are unaware of this, you need to become aware of this very quickly, because all politics that exist in the world at this point revolve around the Belt and Road Initiative. Literally everything that's happening in the world, you should be attempting to connect somehow to the Belt and Road Initiative. So you've been paying attention to Belarus. Well, Belarusian politics, of course. Moscow to Warsaw. The connection is in Minsk. Like, of course, Belarusian politics is surrounding the Belt and Road Initiative, right? So here in Afghanistan, you can see how they've worked so hard. They've built rail up here, and they have plans to build rail up into here and all this. They're doing everything they can. They're bending over backwards to try and avoid Afghanistan. But they would absolutely love to go into Afghanistan and put a rail just like right down here, like right through here, and then right into the Wakhan corridor, straight over to Kabul, right? And then from Kabul, build another rail into Iran, right? Just boop into Mashhad, that then goes to Tehran, and then Tehran goes up into Turkey to I think it's Ankara, I think. Afghanistan was socialist in the past for about a decade. Yeah. Yep, for a little history about Afghanistan, look up Operation Cyclone. No American war is what they say it is. Well, and the narrative that we were always told about what happened in Afghanistan during the Soviet period was that the Soviets invaded and then the CIA started to fund rebel groups. And more, as I learn more and more, I'm beginning to see more and more that it seems like the opposite was true. That the CIA was funding rebel groups within Afghanistan, and Afghanistan requested aid from the Soviets, and they got it, right? And this idea that somehow we crippled Russia economically because of the war in Afghanistan, it's actually not what happened, right? It's just a nice narrative that people tell themselves. What happened in Russia was a legislative coup, that the neoliberal capitalists managed to infect the legislative system and created allies within the legislative system, Gorbachev being one of them. And they fomented a legislative coup. And the communists, basically, the former communists, privatized everything. And that's what introduces neoliberal capitalism into Russia. And that's the collapse of the Soviet Union. What was Afghanistan like before any Soviet influence? I mean, we have pictures of Afghanistani people wearing like modern clothing. Like they were just like, it was just like a normal society, right? Like through the socialist period, people in Afghanistan, like they lived in a modern society. Why shouldn't they, right? And they just can't stop getting fucked with, right? People just keep fucking with them. Which is why I'm actually really hopeful that China will actually manage to connect to the Afghani people up to the Belt and Road Initiative, because it would be an enormous economic boon for them to begin with, to be connected to such an enormous infrastructure project like that. And also it would deter the United States from military involvement in the region, because if they tangle with Afghanistan, well, they're going to tangle with the big boy, right? Like, it's one thing to go and pick on the little guy in the park, right? Well, if that little guy's got a big brother, you're going to maybe leave him alone. And if they can get that rail connected through Afghanistan into Iran and Turkey, now you're looking at, like, an economic alliance that exists here that makes what's happening in the United States look like baby's first society, right? Like, it's just total baby time in the United States. And, China would for sure bring more stability to Afghan. Yeah, China brings stability to basically everybody it interacts with. There's a reason why this rail has been so successful. There's a reason why this rail is so sought out. There's a reason why people are working with China on this rail, because it's bringing stability. Because it creates a stability across the board. Like, everybody that's, like the Europeans, everybody that's connected to the Belt and Road Initiative, they're looking at that, and then they're looking at the Americans as the Americans are in a free fall collapse, and they're thinking, yeah, maybe we should think about leaning more towards China on this one, right? Because China's just like calmly building infrastructure and calmly building rail, right? It's not threatening anybody. It's not bombing anybody. It's not destroying anybody, right? It's constantly looking for solutions that don't involve destroying somebody's homeland, right? Like they're in a constant negotiation with everybody around them, and it's a real negotiation. It's not a negotiation like the way the United States does, where they show up, blow everything up, point a gun at your head, and say, do what we want, right? It's a genuine negotiation between two parties. And so far, so good on that front. So what's interesting, China is like how America was after World War II, but a lot less. I mean, the American Empire was always imperialist. It was always imperialist. Like, the American Empire was building before World War II. Like, the shit that happened in South America pre-World War II, nobody talks about it. But they were fucking this place up forever, dude. Like, forever. Because it was right there. They could just, like, put troops through there. Like, fuck with them. Fuck with them. And don't forget about Africa. Like, the history between the United States and Africa is still real. And China has not, like... China hasn't enslaved a population. China hasn't committed a genocide against a population. Right? Like, China's just doing what it can to, like, be stable. Just, okay, guys, let's be stable. Let's build up China. And, like, what has happened in China can only be described as an economic miracle. It can only be described that way. Colonization of Liberia. Well, I mean, if you ask me, like, in the modern period, nobody talks about Libya. Nobody knows anything about Libya. What happened in Libya is, like, the most disgraceful thing that we have done. For sure. Because, like, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan, right, it wasn't like... It wasn't like we had installed a dictator and we were, like, working on that kind of front. Libya was its own kind of independent thing. But one fun thing that I think is happening in Afghanistan, and this is fun. And so I told you all about the Belt and Road Initiative, all that kind of stuff, and it's important to know that because you'll notice that a lot of the fighting that's happening, so the vice president of the former administration, i.e. the United States administration, one of the first things that he did was that he grabbed enough military people to take this road over, right? To take over this territory. And in Afghanistan, as you can imagine, it's easy to take territory over and hold it. Like, if you go into territory and there isn't any military presence there, because it's mountains, right, you can hold territory pretty easily. And so they've gone into this region, and of course they're pushing up into this area here and creating problems for the Taliban, so on and so forth. And so the question is, well, why this road? Well, because it's the road that goes to China, right? And the likely outcome for the people who are actually fighting in the region is that the Taliban will just say, okay, cool, you can be the viceroy of that road. You'll get like 0.1% of everything that comes through this area. And that guy will be like, sweet, that'll be several $1 million. I'm quite happy with that. And they'll lay down arms and China will build the road. Build the high-speed rail, which they definitely want to do. Like, there's serious mineral deposits in here, dude. Like the wealth that Afghanistan has is serious. It's very serious. Also, China would love to have control of this region because they are sick and tired of dealing with the opium trade, right? China has a long history of opium addiction and dealing with opium as a major crisis and a major problem in their society. It was used by the British on purpose. The British would get Chinese citizens addicted to opium on purpose. It was a huge health crisis that existed in China. The largest producer of opium today is Afghanistan. And the Taliban has a history of banning opium production. So I think China is interested in working with the Taliban if it means that they're going to ban opium production. Because China doesn't want to deal with fucking opium addiction. For very obvious reasons. Because they've dealt with it in the past. And it was pretty bad for them. So I hope that I hit on what you were looking for here, Kian. Talking about Afghanistan. If there's anything specific you want me to talk about, just let me know. Because this is an unfolding situation. That my hope... There's a statement that I keep hitting on, which is that China can build rail faster than the United States can build bombs. And I think that that's what's going to bear out in the end. that if the Taliban, even if you think that the Taliban are these like greedy, psychopathic, murderous, bloodthirsty warlords, well, then they're going to build the Belt and Road Initiative because they want to get rich, right? And if you think that they're actually interested in helping their own people, and you actually think that they're interested in spreading wealth throughout their own society, well, then they're going to connect to the Belt and Road Initiative because they want their society to get rich. So on both sides of that coin, Kabul gets connected to the Belt and Road Initiative, and it successfully happens because at the end of the day, the Chinese can build rail faster than the Americans can build bombs. Afghan poppy farmers should grow hemp. I wonder if it's that simple. I wonder if they could grow. I mean, hemp is very resilient. Yeah, oil has been found in Xinjiang. Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, we found oil in Xinjiang province. There must be a genocide going on in that region. We should send troops to that region to stop that genocide that's definitely happening there. And while we're at it, we'll secure the oil fields, right? Obviously, because then we'll use the money that we make from the oil fields in order to stop the Uyghur genocide, right? Obviously, that's what we're gonna do. Also, the extremists in Xinjiang, no doubt, comes from Afghanistan. I'm kind of touching on it, so it's worth talking about. Yeah, Afghanistan was at war for 20 years under the United States. It had like a 10-year reprieve between the Soviet period and the American period, right? If you are 20 years old and you come from Afghanistan, you have never not known war. Your life has been total war. It's been constant warfare, right? You have not been educated. You have not experienced a normal, peaceful life. Your life has been probably one of a wandering nomad, basically subsisting on what you could get in the world around you. And many of these this has created a refugee crisis, right? Big surprise. Blow up someplace, it creates a refugee crisis. You see how all the Americans are losing their minds about, like, oh, we got to get people shipped off on planes. Get people put on planes and we'll ship them off of Afghanistan. Okay, well, instead of that, imagine it's just people like fleeing into Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, and, of course, going up the Wakhan corridor into Xinjiang, right? And Xinjiang is a very special province in China. It is called the Autonomous Zone. Is it the Uyghur Autonomous Zone? Am I losing my mind? Anyway, they call it an autonomous zone. The Chinese acknowledge that the majority of the people that live in this area are not what's called Han Chinese, right? But the Han Chinese dominate most of China, but it's actually, this autonomous zone is actually majority Muslim population. And so, and the Chinese have been pouring resources and all this kind of stuff to try and improve this area, to try and make it better for several decades now. And the refugee crisis, of course, gets picked up by extremist groups. There is an extremist group that exists in Xinjiang called the Eastern Turkasian Independence Movement. I did it. I'm 20 and the idea that people my age are suffering partially due to my country angers me to agree. I haven't felt before. Yeah, Bumble Guppy, that's like that meme, right? Where what's his name? He's standing on the thing with the noose around his neck, right? First time, eh? Yeah, the Eastern Turkasian Turkmenistan, that's right. Islamic movement. You got it, Nick. And so this is an independence movement that exists within Xinjiang, and it's a terrorist movement, right? Like they use the one that really convinced me how serious the terrorist situation is in Xinjiang was that 10 men went into the transit systems that exist within Xinjiang and with machetes murdered 150 people, right? Just imagine 10 dudes going onto your bus, onto your subway system, and killing 150 people with knives, right? That's a problem. Right? You got to face that. And so the way that the Chinese are attempting to deal with this is by integrating people into the wider economy. And how do you integrate people into the wider economy? You teach them Chinese, you teach them basic skills, right? You get them a job, these sorts of things. And because the Chinese, instead of dropping bombs on these guys, instead of enacting an actual war against this movement, they get accused of committing to a Uyghur genocide, which is fucking adorable. The World Bank has gone in there. 30 delegates from the UN have gone in here. Pakistan has gone in there. Italy sent 3 research teams into the region. Literally no one that has gone in to Xinjiang has walked out saying that there's a genocide happening there. Not one organization. Not one. Except the CIA. Even the State Department, even the United States State Department says that there isn't a genocide happening in Xinjiang. Like, I just don't know what you need at this point. Like, why are you clinging on to this, like, absurdist idea that there's a genocide going on when literally everyone with the exception of the CIA has gone into that region and has said it is not happening. And yet, the majority of Americans and good sections of Canadians think that there is a Uyghur genocide, that propaganda campaign has been successful. That's why organizations like the CIA are dangerous, right? Why they shouldn't exist in your society. Yeah. What is America? Had the same problem? Oh, wait, they do. White supremacists, and USA does literally nothing. Well, and in regards to the Uyghur situation, well, okay, so we know that there are concentration camps along the Mexican-United States border, right? ICE detention centers, if you prefer, right? We know they're there. Well, okay, what if the United States suddenly said, all those people in the detention center, we're going to teach them English, we're going to give them some skills, right? And then we'll get them a job and send them into the society. I think the entire world would go, oh, thank God. I think the entire world would say, that's great. That's fucking great. Like, sure, you have these detention centers. Sure, it's a messy situation. Sure, you built your stupid wall, right? This dumbass Mexican, like, the embarrassing, obvious grift that was just a payout for contractors, so obviously. But let's take the people who are in these detention centers and instead of, like, deporting them or demonizing them or abusing them, teach them English, give them some skills, send them into the economy. But, you can't do that because they took our jobs. They took because it turns out connecting someone's livelihood, connecting their ability to feed themselves and their families to a job is always a bad idea. Who knew? Who knew except the communists? Who knew except the communists? What do I got? What other news do I have here? COVID cases down a little bit here in Ontario. That's always nice. Still above 500, but you got to do what you got to do. We're not plowing upwards, which is nice. Here is an interesting report. So, a longer road to recovery. Canada's economy shrinks, catching economists, neoliberal capitalists who are not economists, by surprise. First contraction since depths of pandemic last year. So here's the graph that really matters, right? So this is, of course, what's called the pandemic contraction, right? Which makes sense. Everybody was freaking out. It is a crash. It's a capitalist crash, right? But you can see that it popped right back up, right? And they assumed that, okay, yeah, we assume like kind of a decline, all that kind of stuff. This here if you don't read Marx and if you don't know anything, if you don't read Adam Smith, if you don't actually read any economics, but you say you're an economist because you graduated from Simon Fraser University or something, then oh yeah, you can be caught off guard by that. It's extremely straightforward. Like, you've created a housing crisis, and it is a creation. You made a housing crisis happen. People aren't spending their money, right? Because, especially now, everybody sees this conservative government showing up, right? Everybody sees, like, there's a lot of uncertainty. So people aren't spending money, right? People aren't doing anything. They're holding on to what they have in the pale hope that it's going to get them through. And it's not, obviously, because that's not how capital works, right? That's not how capitalism works. That if you hoard your money, then they just collapse the money market, and that's how they get your money, right? That the capitalist goal is to get your money, and so they'll do that, and they've got mechanisms to do that. No, and that's just it. Richard Wolff, like, this is the thing. A couple of days ago, I showed a clip of, or was it yesterday even? Anyway, of Chris Hedges, and Chris Hedges was saying, Chris Hedges would say, where are the people who are right about Afghanistan? He was talking about Afghanistan. Where are the people in the media now who are right about Afghanistan? Why are the media, why is the corporate media not bringing forward the people who are correct about Afghanistan? Why are those voices not being allowed into the discourse? Why are they still silenced even now they've been vindicated? And I feel Richard Wolff has a similar thing going on here. Richard Wolff was saying there's not going to be a recovery. Like, what are you talking about? There's not going to suddenly be an economic recovery. You're not going to suddenly get everybody back to work. Like, that's not going to happen. And for lots and lots and lots and lots of reasons. Especially after you've made the income inequality worse, right? There's situations happening in towns now where all of the housing in these towns have been bought by rich people, right? So rich people own 2 or 3 properties in the town. So all the rich people live there. And because of that, housing has skyrocketed and it's chased out. It's literally cleared the town out of lower income workers. And so you've got all of these businesses that literally cannot open their doors to facilitate and serve these wealthy people because they can't get workers, because the workers are gone. Because the workers can't afford to live in the town. Why? Because there's wealth inequality. And over the pandemic, the wealth inequality has gotten worse, right? Billionaires have made way more money during this pandemic than before. That as far as the billionaire class has been concerned, this pandemic has been a massive success for them. But it means that you end up with situations like this, where people can't afford to live in the areas where the jobs are. And so the places can't open, the economy can't function. So what happens? You lose your growth. You lose your growth, right? Oh, workers can't afford to live in the areas where the jobs are, so the jobs don't happen. So much for your stupid jobs theory, right? Oh, good. Thank God you got that billionaire, though. Thank God you got that billionaire. Can't eat the food, can't wear no clothes, I can't even breathe the air. But thank God we got that billionaire. That's a country song I'm working on. New news, I'm trying to start a communist reading group in Thunder Bay. Amazing. Good for you, bud. Obviously hoping for more direct community action in the future. If you would have any community organizing tips for me, I would love to hear. Nick, this is the best advice that I can give anyone who is attempting to organize anything, okay? Set a date, print the flyer, distribute the flyer. You are the promoter, right? Don't wait for a movement to come by. You are the movement. The fact that you are here right now talking to me, asking me about how to move forward and all of that means that you are the leader in Thunder Bay. You, Nick, are the leader of whatever communist movement is happening in Thunder Bay. Until you actually find the actual other communists who are connected around and all of that, it's you. So you print the flyer, you set the date, you show up, and when no one else comes, you do it again. Right? You set the date, you print the flyer, you distribute the flyer, you show up on time, ready to go on the day to do whatever it was you were there to do, whether it be a protest, a book club, I don't care. And when no one shows up, you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. I would set the date, bare minimum 2 weeks, but give it a month. Set it a month in advance. Start promoting. But you really want to do the heavy promoting in the week leading up. The heavy promoting should be done in the week leading up, but promote if you have the energy to promote with consistency. Use TikTok as well. Use TikTok. Reading groups, I would like to put flyers in the school, coffee shop, mall, etc. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And if you can get allies who will help you put that stuff up, that's great. That's great. But the most important part of it, in my view, the most important part of it is that you are going to set this stuff up and no one will come. Okay? That is 100% going to happen to you. And if you stop because of it, the movement dies. Greta Thunberg is exactly the case study for this. Okay? That she showed up to protest by herself, and then suddenly there's 10,000 people. And that's how these things work. That you are suddenly going to have an influx. You're suddenly going to have a big spike. It's suddenly going to be a big deal. There's suddenly going to be film crews. It's all going to happen suddenly, and you're not going to know where it came from. Because as far as you were concerned as the central organizer, the entire time you were organizing, the response you got was, oh yeah, okay, I guess. And that's it. And people didn't come, and nobody gave a shit, and then all of a sudden there's 10,000 people. That's the story of the Occupy movement. That's the story of every major civil rights movement. That's the story of literally every protest movement that has existed in the planet. That it's like one person organizing, trying to get it done, nothing. And if you can find other people in Thunder Bay that are interested in organizing along those lines already, great. Attempt to saddle up to them, attempt to get to know them, attempt to work with them. But until you do, it's you. And don't lose heart. I believe that you can do it. My dog is looking at me like, come on, buddy. You should put me on my lap. Well, come up then. Do you want to come up? You just want pets. Some dude literally owns 50% of the property in my town. That's so fucking stupid. They pay nothing in taxes, literal parasites. Ugh. Most people need to be reminded 3 times before they start paying attention. Yeah. I can tell right now that to expect no one is gonna... I can tell right now that to expect no one is the best advice I've got. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for this honesty. I would love to let you know how it goes. Yeah, do let me know how it goes, Nick. I would like to know. Because a big reason why I started this live stream, or at least one of the reasons I tell myself anyway, is exactly for people like you. Because when no one comes, when you feel isolated and alone, when you feel like nothing is happening, hi, I'll be here, right? That you will at least have someone like me to stand with in solidarity with, which is something that's sorely lacking in the discourse, if you ask me. That most people feel isolated, most people feel detached, most people feel like they're screaming into a black void, and we're so spread out here in Canada. Like, you're in Thunder Bay, I got people in British Columbia, I got people in the prairies, I got people in the southern states, I got people in the New York region, right? We're all spread out, right? And we're all attempting to get something happening in our own area. We're all attempting to move forward. You might also be interested, dude. I don't know much about these guys, but they are a communist. VoteCommunist.com. They're a communist organization that, do they have anybody? They don't have anybody in Thunder Bay. And but like, if this is a legitimate communist movement that's actually happening, most communist movements that I've seen, most political organizations, I think, are what are called honeypots. They're there to deflect communists. They're owned by capitalists in order to just kind of quell the discourse. But these guys seem legit. I'm going to be connecting to them myself, hopefully do an interview with one of them. And but when it goes badly, at least you'll be able to come here, and I'll be able to stand in solidarity with you. So that's what I hope this channel turns into, for lots of people, because like I'm not like the other leftists that I see. I'm not interested in like I want. Yeah, I would like this channel to pay my bills, sure, but I don't want to turn this into a business. Like, this is a political movement. Like, we're here to get rid of these fucking capitalists, right? We're here to get rid of these fucking capitalists. I'm not interested in reporting on getting rid of the capitalists. I'm interested in getting rid of the capitalists. And until I see the rest of these leftists on the street, then I don't really think they're very serious. I think they're more interested in their business than they are in the movement. Oh. And I mean, like, the economy is not gonna, like, it's not gonna recover, right? Yeah. The online left actually inspired me to start with movements. Yeah. Well, because, like, there is no real online left, if you ask me. Like, what is that even, right? Like, commenting on, like, gender issues, even commenting on class issues, right? Creating little video essays and all that kind of stuff, like, that's fun and all. And it's decent content, and some of them make good content. And, like, reporting on things from a more socialist bent, like, okay, you know, good for you, right? But, like, we have to be taking to the streets. That's where the power actually lives. The power lives in the streets. Because once you're on the streets, you can't bullshit anymore. You can't, if there's 10,000 people standing in a spot demanding something, you can't bullshit. You can't pretend like that doesn't exist. You can't go, well, polling data, you can't do any of that. If there's 10,000 people standing in the streets saying that they want something, then guess what? You can't fucking bullshit it. That's why the protest movement that happened here in Toronto, the climate change protest before this pandemic, was one of the most significant events in the climate change conversation, because it forced the Liberals to actually declare a climate emergency. Now, the Liberals wanked us along. That, looking back on that protest movement, we should have stayed in the streets until they actually passed serious legislation. That we should have mobilized ourselves, and instead of just going back to work and instead of like leaving, we should have taken over the halls of power and forced them to pass serious legislation. Like, that's what should have happened. But, you know, we were young, and you see how gullible Canadians are. Canadians are very gullible, and so we punched up and thought, yeah, we did it, yeah. And then, you know, Justin Trudeau came out and did his photo op and made a speech and declared a climate emergency, and then fuck all happened, right? So the next time around, I'm going to be encouraging people, yeah, don't leave. Like, don't leave. Stay here. You see the Parliament building right there? See the Parliament building right fucking there? Take that over. Go inside. Take it over. This is ours now. We stay here until you pass serious legislation. I can only imagine the amount of non-for-profit organizations for political movements that would emerge if there were only a UBI. Well, and once you realize how degenerate the capitalist model for dealing with issues like poverty and homelessness actually are, that the systems that are in place right now, here in Toronto at least, but it's true across the United States, it's true across Canada, to deal with homelessness are actually incentivized to maintain homelessness because they're only paid if they deal with homeless people, right? So they are completely disincentivized on a financial level to actually deal with the crisis of homelessness. Because if they resolve the crisis of homelessness, they're out of a job. That's what it's come down to. That the capitalist model it exists to maintain homelessness. That even and this is so built in that even the people who are there to ameliorate homelessness must be encouraged to continue the cycle of homelessness. Like, and once you piece together that this is what's happening, you can see pretty cleanly that something like a basic income is absolutely necessary. And like the people who are rocking around saying like, "Oh, it'll destroy the economy," I'm like, "Yeah, good, great, like super. That's the goal. The whole goal is to destroy this economy. I would absolutely love to destroy this economy that's destroying my life and the life of my children, like my nieces and nephews, right? Like, for sure. Like that." To me, when people say, "Oh, but that'll destroy the economy," it's like saying, "Oh, but that'll kill the Nazis." Like, yeah. like, yeah. Like, don't you want to kill the Nazis? Isn't the whole idea that we kill the Nazis? Isn't that something that we're all supposed to be like really rooting for, right? But people have so wrapped up in their minds the idea that like the economy is a good thing, and especially like these conservative types, you know, this guy that like lives in a house and you know, maybe owns his own business, right? And he's walking around being like, "I'm a capitalist, I believe in capitalism," and you look at these guys and you're like, I mean, you're technically correct, but it is like a blacksmith defending an emperor. You know what I mean? That like a cruel, brutal, psychopathic emperor who is abusing everybody and destroying everything around him. And somebody says, "Hey, maybe we should do away with the monarchical system." And the blacksmith goes, "Oh, what, you want to destroy the economy?" Yeah. Like, yeah. I would like to destroy the monarchical economy. I would like to destroy the capitalist economy. Very much so. Very much so. I think that we can do better than this by a lot, like by a good amount, right? Like I think the thing that like we could 100% do better than this, like 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Because like look at how far we've come while basically doubling down on a religious ideology, right? Can you imagine what would happen if we actually used economics? Like, can you imagine what would happen if we actually used the science of economics? If we actually studied it, if we actually paid attention to it, if we actually listened to the facts and the evidence that exist within the body of economics, but like we've never done that. Like all of the successes of the capitalist system have been built off of blood and slavery, like literally genocide and slavery is what's gotten us to this point. And these capitalists turn around and say like, "Oh, this is the best system that's ever existed." It's like, okay, bud, but like, you know, the problem with capitalism is that you eventually run out of slaves. Like that was the funniest thing that Margaret Thatcher said. The problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. Titter, titter, titter. Well, the problem with capitalism is that you eventually run out of slaves. That's the problem with capitalism. And when you run out of slaves, suddenly you don't have an economic system any longer, right? Oh, but if you say that, oh, it's so hyperbolic. Oh, you're so uncouth. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, kind of cringy. Well, guys, I hope that you had a good one. I hope that you're all doing really well out there. Good luck to you, Nick. Good luck to you with your reading. I strongly suggest moving that into a protest movement as fast as you can, bud. I worry that you're kind of tricking yourself into believing that we'll all just sit down, read a book, and then everything will get better because I'm educating people. Not how it's going to work. Not how it's going to work. You need to be visible. You need to be in the streets. You need to be in positions of power. If you can get even 10 people out, start shutting down streets. That's what I'm doing. So, always remember, guys. Always remember. Each and every one of you is a divine being, standing in divine energy. Oh, we could use some of it right now. These capitalists spend billions and billions of dollars to gaslight you into believing that you are less than what you are. Good luck. We're going to need it.